Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of the Brickyard podcast. We are coming to you live at 10:46 on a Monday night Eastern time, and we have taken about 4 weeks off in the middle of the off season. Both of us have been doing some traveling, but we are here to break down every single move that has happened in the NBA offseason, and there has definitely been a lot that has happened. There is a lot to go over there. We were both traveling, but you know what? With the NBA, we're in the dead season of sports right now. There's no real football news going on, and you kind of just let the NBA offseason run its course. And now we're gonna go through every single team in the NBA's trade, and then also every single signing or re-sign in the NBA offseason.
We love to see it. It's been a long time away. I was in Vegas slash New England. You were in pretty much all of Idaho. You went to Montana. You went to Missouri. You've been a lot of places the last month.
Yeah, I know. I planned a 2 week vacation to just like go through Idaho and Montana. There's nothing in Idaho. Definitely don't go there. Go to Montana if you want to. And then after that, when I planned it, my family was like, "Oh, we're doing a whole family reunion." Because we have all like haven't been in the same place in a couple of years. So like one lives in Denver, Chicago. Everyone else is still in New Hampshire. I'm in Texas, so the most central place was Branson, Missouri. So we all drove there. So I go immediately, get back, work 2 days, and then the second day after working, I leave at like 7 o'clock, drive to Oklahoma City, then drive over to Branson after already being gone for 2 weeks. So I'm glad I was able to get the time off and go out there though. But pretty much been to the deep south and then also the top of the country.
Yeah, the thing that when you told me about your trips, Idaho and Montana sounded really cool, but the fact that the whole family conglomerated into Branson, Missouri, was the question mark I always had. I'm like, how did everybody? Is there anybody who's a root in Branson? Like, does anybody live in Branson, or is it just like that was the middle ground for everybody?
It's the middle ground between Chicago and Colorado. They're just looking for something that wouldn't take more than 2 days to drive there. Still ended up taking my family from like Colorado 2 days to drive there, but just something in the middle. If we had asked before, though, they were already meeting someone else in Nashville after that, so we actually could have all gone to Nashville, which would have been a lot better. But Branson is essentially trying to be a small version of Vegas. So if you go downtown there, it's like a bunch of mini golf arcades slash theaters. There's an aquarium downtown. You have this place that's like, we have a zip line. You're like, that's cool. It goes over our parking lot. So, like, when you go on our zip line, you can see your car down there, man. And then they have two Trump outlet stores. No, they have a regular Trump store, and then they have a Trump outlet store if you can't afford the regular Trump store. I go into the gift shop. It's like cut off jean jackets with fight with Trump like being shot on it. They have Confederate flag bathing suits that say rebel on there. So if you want to like feel like you're in the deep south and then you check your phone in the middle of the night, it's like 11 o'clock. There's 85% humidity there. The lake that we went to was called Moonshine Beach. So it like tells you everything you
That's kind of
need to
cool.
know there. But like the water was actually pretty nice there, but we just rented out like a big house that was 3 floors. But when we got to that big house, apparently the cleaner didn't show up, and she no call no showed. So the family before we got there like left fish in the fridge. The garbage disposal, like the disposal in the sink smelled like they tried to grind up fish bones. So there was like a slime in the fridge. There was dog hair everywhere and in one of the bathtubs. So yeah, like the entire house was a mess. So they ended up getting refunded 27% and the cleaning fee returned to it. So yeah, the first day I wasn't there for that, but apparently like they showed up and the entire house was just a mess.
That's disgusting. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Branson, Missouri is an interesting area. How far of a drive is it from? Because you went to Oklahoma City first. How far away is it from Oklahoma City?
From Oklahoma City, it's like uh, a 5.5 hour drive, depending on traffic, and then you go through like the upper part of Arkansas. So like I stopped for gas in Arkansas too, and it's like two homeless people harassing cars in the street. Um, I go into the gas station, and it's like half of the gas station is a wall of chairs where people can gamble on computers, and it looks like windows like two monitors that they're hooked up to. And then I go to cash out, and it takes like 5 minutes for this lady with six teeth to ring me up. And then I make my way out of Arkansas for the last time, hopefully. And then, like, Oklahoma City, I pull out my hotel, and right around the corner, there's like two people trying to shoot up. Like, the girl is there with the rope, and then see the guy with the syringe, and they're about to like shoot up right next to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is like real life. And I thought about just laying on my horn. I'm like, would that help stop this? Would that be the right thing to do? Is just lay
You
on
could
my
have saved
horn, and
someone's
maybe
life.
they won't shoot up like right on the street? Or will they just go full World War Z mode and run after me?
I mean, you could have saved a life potentially by honking your horn. Yeah, Branson, Missouri. That is an interesting choice. It's a baby Vegas. I happened to find myself in Vegas while you were in Idaho, and I've said a lot of negative things about Vegas in my time on this
Okay.
show, but this time around, we took the long way to Vegas. We took Route 66 because my friend Troy was visiting, so we took the long way to Vegas. And first off, I'll tell you about the speeding ticket later, but Vegas, we entered Vegas at like 10 p.m., and that is when you enter Vegas. You do not enter Vegas before the sunshine is not down, because going there at night and seeing the skyline, Vegas skyline is arguably the best skyline in America. I feel like it's in that conversation of like you enter and you see just there's nothing because if you've ever taken the drive, it's like desert, 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 Vegas. When you see Vegas, when you take that turn over and it's just casinos and the fucking sphere and all these other things that are there, it feels like you're going into an arcade game. But Vegas was a lot better this time. Now that I didn't lose $5,000 of my own money, I just watched somebody lose their money. But Vegas, just like the last time, like 48 hours in Vegas is all you need, and then you just want to get the fuck out of there. And that's exactly what happened. However, I will say I was able to go to the pawn shop of Pawn Stars. So I have a Pawn Stars shirt, and if I didn't already pack it, I would show you. But I got this shirt that it's like the Pawn Stars logo, and on the back of it, it's like this grossly anime shirt that says Chumley's Angels on the back of it. One of the best shirts ever made, and I bought that immediately.
Were you like
But
a
Vegas was
fan of
great.
the show, or just the fan of like Pawn Stars being a meme? Like, did you watch Pawn Stars growing up?
I think I watched Pawn Stars the way everyone else did. It was like stepdad had it on, or
Yeah.
like dad had it on. So it's like I watched it kind of just by watching it, just because it was always on. But also like back in the day when there was like Facebook games, I had a mean pawn shop that was just insanely just disgusting back in the day. So I would say I'm a fan of Pawn Stars, but it is mostly for the meme. And I was hoping to see Chumley there, to be honest, if he's even still there.
Yeah. Do you go to like any of like the celebrity chef restaurants in Vegas, like Gordon Ramsay's or like Ramsay Food?
No, because like the plates are like $500 or like $300 at least. It's ridiculous. I'm not doing that shit. We did go to this
Yeah.
place called Tacos El Gordo. Incredible. Probably like top five taco I've ever had in my life. To be honest, El Pastor had like the spit with like the rotating spit for El Pastor. They just shave it off. They have the carne asada there that was phenomenal. Like everything there was unbelievable. If I had to make like a top five taco place in America that I've been to, knowing that I've been to several, that's on that top five easily.
Wow.
It's outstanding.
Yeah, and you're a taco connoisseur too, so
Yeah,
high
so that
praise.
means a lot. But But Vegas, yeah. As soon as I can say that confidently, I will never ever do the Phoenix to Vegas drive ever again, because for one, I've done it now 3 times, and every drive it gets more and more miserable. But this time around, we're going down. Troy wants to go to Route 66, and so we take the Route 66 route. As soon as I get onto Route 66, the speed limit, by the way, in Arizona is 75 on these highways, but everyone's going like 90 to 100 because there's nothing. So we go into Route 66, and I'm just using like the 10 to 15 mile per hour above the speed limit rule. I'm going like maybe just over 10 miles over the speed limit. The first car that I pass on Route 66 just happens to be like the town sheriff. So immediately I'm going, let's say the speed limit's 65. I'm going like 76. Let's say it's 76 I'm going. Fucking red lights immediately. Wee woo. Turns around. I'm like, shit. All right, boys. I got to handle this fucking car that's pulling me over. So I get in there. I give him my registration, my ID. And he's like, shouldn't be driving like this in this part of town. I'm like, all right. Sounds good, Haas. Whatever. It's in the back for like 15 minutes running all my shit. And then he comes back. He's like, yeah, you drive like this shit again, you won't be driving much longer. So you better like just like slow down, watch your speed, especially around these parts. I'm like, all right,
What
Haas, got
parts?
it.
Your tumbleweeds?
Yeah,
You're
exactly. What
protecting?
parts?
You're protecting
What do
your
we
cacti, man. Your tumbleweeds? Oh no, you might hit one of our tumbleweeds in town. What you
We
gonna
might
do
run over a
now?
rattlesnake. We might run
Oh
over a
no.
rattlesnake at one point. My bad. And the worst part is like because I got my ticket, I didn't want to collect more tickets along the way because Vegas itself is already an expensive excursion. But like the rest of the time, I'm just going 5 over the speed limit. So everyone else is going 100, and I'm just trucking along at 75 miles per hour for the rest of the trip because I refused to get a second ticket, and I was gonna fight it, and then I'm like, I just decided not to. It wasn't worth it, but bullshit. That was the thing that cost the most in Vegas because gambling wise, we broke even, and then it was the speeding ticket that was the most expensive.
Did you hit the Uno table in Vegas?
I hit blackjack pretty hard. We did roulette once. Craps. I was making a killing at craps at one point. That was a great time. But I think Vegas is best when you have like a sacrificial lamb. Every Vegas trip needs one sacrificial lamb that's going to lose all their money and leave very depressed. And that was our friend Jake. He lost $10,000, and that was a lot more fun for someone else to see lose thousands of dollars than for me.
Were you ripping cigarettes the whole time?
I had a whole pack of American spirits that were just I ripped through a whole pack in two
I mean, you're
days.
with Troy too, and he's a fiend, so it's kind of hard
He's a
not
sig
to.
pig. Yeah, and then we didn't really like get like a we got pretty drunk the first night. The second night we were just mostly high, but we didn't get to secure any other substances. But Vegas was much. This is probably the best Vegas trip, but it doesn't have the same amount of stories that the last one had. So that's the only downside. But it was a great time. Vegas. I think everyone should see Vegas once in their lifetime. It is pretty. It's magical in an evil way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as fun when you're not getting shot at, right?
Yeah, exactly. But Vegas is cool. I would go back to Vegas again, but probably not for quite some time. I left Vegas. I'm like, all right, I'll come back to you in 5 years when I have thousands of dollars to blow.
Yeah, go the spear or something.
Yeah. And then we went back to Boston for a week and a half. Went to the Red Sox Yankees game on a triple date, and we won on a walk off. And since then, the Red Sox are now 17-2 since that day, and in the last 25 games, they're like 23-2. Pretty much the sacrificial lamb for Jalen Brown, but we like to see it.
I
But
hate
yeah,
when they
it
do
was a good.
that. The Red Sox are always like, we're terrible. Oh wait, we just went 17-2, and then we're gonna win the World Series next year, and then suck the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's the best and worst experience because the first 3 months of baseball, Red Sox were miserable to watch, but now it's like they're the hottest team in baseball. They're fun to watch again. They can score. It's like it's great to watch. But what did it cost the city of Boston? Jalen Brown.
Yeah, it cost the city of Boston, Jalen Brown, and Nikola Vucevic for the Red Sox to go on a run. And Now, I thought about this, and Jaylen Brown, I'm sure everyone knows. We're gonna start with the Celtics, even though the Hawks technically come first. But this is the biggest news I would say of the offseason. Gets traded for Paul George, and I looked at my phone and I'm like, that's not real. Who would trade Paul George straight up for Jaylen Brown? I look again, it says ESPN. I'm like, no way, that's the real ESPN. We walk into where we're getting dinner that night, and then on ESPN is Sham's ugly, disgusting, repugnant face there. Like, can you believe Brad Stevens traded Jaylen Brown for Paul George? I'm like, no, I can't believe it. And you're literally trading someone who won you an NBA Finals, has the second most playoff wins, or I believe he has the most playoff wins since entering the league. Is he either has the
Hmm.
most or second most. He's right up there, and he's the Finals MVP. And then you trade him straight up for Paul George and maybe one of the most bizarre salary dumps, because that's what this is, a salary dump for Paul George. And now we're hoping a 37-year-old who has continued to decline is going to fill that void. And then we're also just going to have better players around Jason Tatum and not, a finals MVP with him. So this was just bizarre. And, for me, it just seems like the Celtics are turning into the Red Sox, where we have a new owner come in salary cap hell, immediately get rid of Porzingis, immediately get rid of Drew Holiday. We're dumping Malcolm Brogdon's contract, and then they're like, all right, do we want the two most expensive salaries in the league on our team? Or should we dump Jaylen Brown and then build around Jason Tatum? And then if Jason Tatum maybe struggles with injury, the Achilles isn't the same, we have Jason Tatum and Paul George who we can dump, and then we've accumulated assets and we can now rebuild that team in case we need to. Go into a full rebuild mode. So not only did you dump Jaylen Brown's salary, but then you wouldn't have Jaylen Brown stuck on a team with maybe a worse Jason Tatum just in case. Where now you have the possibility where he's not going to be 100% himself again, and it seems like it makes a lot easier to just go ahead and flip him and do a full rebuild if they really need to. Because not only did they bring in Paul George, they brought in Mike Conley, who's also really old.
Yeah.
And then they bring in Mitchell Robinson. I like that pickup a lot, but
Yeah, it's funny that you say that.
I don't know. What do you think?
Meeting I was meeting my girlfriend's family at a 99's restaurant when I got the news. And it wasn't the news, I didn't check my phone because I wasn't on my phone. I was trying to be respectful. I just am looking around and I see a TV and it just says Jaylen Brown traded for Paul George. I'm like, I'm not going to read that. That's not true. There's no way they traded him for Paul George, especially because a couple of weeks before they were talking about trading him for Giannis, which is a way better move. No matter what you think about Giannis on the Celtics, Giannis or Paul George, who would you rather have? Would you rather have had Giannis in 2015 over Paul George at that point? I would have taken Giannis. But I see that. I'm like, no, there's no way. I leave. I check my phone. You text me. A couple other people text me, and they're like, what the fuck is this? And that was our immediately. I think every person in America thought the same thing. Like, what the fuck? Because the Sixers, for pretty much all of NBA history, have been the Celtics whipping boy. Outside of this past playoff run where they blew a 3-1 lead, they didn't beat the Celtics in the postseason since the 80s. And that was the only time they beat the Celtics ever in the playoffs. And now suddenly, you build a team with Joel Embiid, Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey, and I know I'm forgetting another major player there, but those three alone are absolute studs. And then there's rumor that LeBron might want to join that party. Surprise, surprise. Now suddenly the Sixers are the best team in the East at this point. And your return back is 37-year-old Paul George, who had the worst contract in the NBA last year. He was terrible for you. And now he's going to be probably not too great for the Celtics either. And the salary dump is not that much of a salary dump. You really just save a year of salary. He's still making $55 million. So it's outside of the picks that you get that aren't going to be worth much, why did you do this? To me, it's was there something wrong with Jaylen Brown in the front office? Why wouldn't you, if you're going to trade him, why wouldn't you trade him for Giannis? It's all these things that play into it. This is by far, the Celtics took a playbook out of the Red Sox. They're like, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to be retarded for about this entire offseason. Let's make the worst trade in Celtics history, just like the Red Sox did with Mookie Betts. We're like, you know what? We're going to play retard for a minute and trade for Paul George. It blew my mind.
Yeah, and the craziest part is after this trade, Colin Cowherd is like, "Hi guys, welcome back to my Valley Girl podcast on the volume. Did you know that like owners and front offices think like Jaylen Brown thinks he's like too smart and he's like the smartest guy in the room?" I'm like, if the Celtics thought that Jaylen Brown thought he was the smartest guy in the room, maybe he is if you went out there and traded him for Paul George. Like, the fact that the media immediately came out and was like, Jaylen Brown is this toxic player, and it's like he went on his stream and he said some things, but every single player in the NBA is a diva, and not let's not act like the exception is Jaylen Brown to the rule. Like he's done nothing but good things for the city itself of Boston, which how much he's invested. And then Colin Cowherd comes out and he's like, yeah, he has this thing where he thinks he's the smartest guy in the NBA. The NBA front office think that, and there's this immediate jump in the NBA to assassinate his character, almost trying to justify what the Celtics did trading for Paul George when it makes no sense whatsoever, especially sending him to a team with VJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey. Like, you couldn't even get VJ Edgecombe for Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I forgot about VJ Edgecombe. They could have easily added him into the mix, and if you got VJ Edgecombe and Paul George, that's easier to swallow. Maybe you try to trade for Tyrese Maxey if they're available, but there's just too many scenarios where even the trade packages that they had outside of the Sixers trade, they had the Bucks as an option. I know there was rumors of him going to potentially to Charlotte. That could have been an interesting trade. But all of these other trade offers that are rooming around, that are whispers at this point now, were these were legitimate or not, we don't know. But they got easily the worst potential offer. They got an aging star, horrible contract with just a couple of pick swaps. Like it doesn't. There's no way to justify it in my brain that this is better for the team and for them competing for a title. That's a load of shit.
Yeah, and then people are like, oh, well, the Celtics thought that Derek White had a better regular season than Jaylen Brown. I'm like,
And he didn't.
I watched Derek White in person against San Antonio, and I like Derek White, but I've also seen him against the Knicks get bullied by OG Anunoby and put in a blender by Jalen Brunson. Yes, is he a great defender in the regular season? But Derek White just isn't. Like, when him and Pritchard are on the floor, the Celtics are just too small when they go small with Derek White, and he kind of got pushed around against the Knicks. OG Anunoby was able to post him up, and then when he has to be a main scorer, like, he just loses gas. His three-point shot got worse, so I feel like you could have traded Derek White for Paul George, if anyone. And then apparently the Hornets turned down, or the Celtics turned down Miles. They turned down a trade for Naz Reid in Charlotte. Is for him and Bridges, which would have been a good trade for them as well. Or it was him and Brandon Miller, and then the Celtics turned that trade down. So they actually think Paul George is going to be a good defender, and I guess he had like some good moments against the Celtics. He did have good numbers off the catch, like from three-point land. So they really just need Paul George to get injured or suspended for doing steroids so he's healthy for the playoffs.
Again.
But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see a team like completely built around Jason Tatum and what that looks like. And I think they're trying to go all in. Tatum wants an MVP. He can't really do that without Jaylen Brown there. Do you think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, do you think it was Jason Tatum was the one who had the issue with him? Because he was the one who he sat out Game 7, and then they blow their first 3-1 lead in Celtics history, lose for the first time against the Philadelphia 76ers in 80 years. So it was a pretty significant loss, especially since they were such a heavy favorite going into that series. I was a little bit nervous about it just because of the playoff matchups. But do you think, Jason Tatum sitting out was kind of them seeing what Jaylen Brown would do in a game like that leading a team, and they're like, well, if Tatum isn't the guy, we don't necessarily believe without Tatum being himself, we can have both of these contracts on the team. So if we have to trade Jaylen Brown and then eventually rebuild, we'd rather just see what Jason Tatum has on his own now next year.
I think there's definitely validity to that. I do think he was actually hurt because he was coming off his Achilles, but I do think that that's a perfect opportunity for them to assess, can Jaylen Brown be a number one guy for them? He was the number one guy for them all of the regular season. He was in the MVP conversation, and I think it's going to be good to see Jaylen Brown be his own guy and see Tatum be his own guy. What do they look like post breakup? Realistically, Jaylen Brown isn't going to be the guy in Philly. It's probably going to be Maxey or maybe even still Embiid if he's still healthy. But building around Tatum, I do think is the right option. If you're going to split them up, I'd rather have Tatum because I think he's a guy that probably works more as a glue figure, especially with how he is playmaking wise. And he can be that de facto scorer if he needs to be. So I think they made the right choice of who to trade. I just think the trade offer was terrible. Now it sounds like for them, what they're doing is they got Mitchell Robinson, so they got a big, and that was a good addition there. And then Mike Conley is kind of like a de facto. They always say that every offseason it's like the Celtics need a true point guard. Mike Conley is the definition of a true point guard. And then Paul George, he is an aging star. However, he still is a very good player, I would say, at this point. He's not quite a superstar anymore. But I think they're adding the right pieces if they're going to build around Tatum. Get a point guard, get a big, get somebody that can be kind of the number two scorer for you, like Paul George, but a guy that we know is not the number one. So with the egos clash, I think they made the right choice. But as far as do I think that Jason Tatum sat out for Game 7 to assess all that, I'm not sure. But I think they made the right choice trading Brown, just not for what they got.
What do you think what do you think about the stat where Peyton Pritchard is much better without Jaylen Brown on the floor, and then apparently there's a report the Celtics want Pritchard to take a Jalen Brunson type of leap, and they want him to be like their Jalen Brunson.
I think it's optimistic. I think Peyton Pritchard is a stud, but like Jalen Brunson is just Jalen Brunson. He's not going to be. I don't think there's just because he's short and has handles and can shoot well and take over games. I don't think Peyton Pritchard is going to be the next Jalen Brunson. I think Jalen Brunson's a one of one in that scenario. But can Brunson can he take another step and be, an all-star for them and be a de facto number two for them? Then yeah, sure. But for them to assume that they're going to make this trade and have Peyton Pritchard be the substantially better player, I just think it's wishful thinking. We'll see if it ends up paying out, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I think the other thing to think about too is like Celtics Summer League. They've been really good. Seems like they had another good draft, and I think the player that a lot of people are overlooking that Brad Stevens probably has in mind is Ugo Gonzalez, filling in that role for Jaylen Brown because he showed he has really good defensive instincts, and if he can come along well enough offensively, then you'd pretty much have everyone on your team similar to the Spurs, where everyone can score and play defense, and Ugo is a bigger player, so if they do need a defensive lineup, they could have like Derek White, Ugo Gonzalez, Paul George, Jason Tatum, and Mitchell Robinson on the floor, and it's a big defensive lineup. So I do think that's a player where if he can take a leap in year 2, it's definitely a big ask, but that is someone who you have some big athletic wings like him and Jordan Walsh, and then think about how many minutes in the playoffs that Jaylen Brown has played and how many minutes that he hasn't missed and his physical play style. Do you think that in Brad Stevens' mind, he's like, when is this going to catch up to him? And maybe I'd rather move off of him a year or two early where Jaylen Brown might have some injury issues over the next few years with just how physical of a player he is, and he's been in the playoffs going on deep runs every single year since basically his second year in the NBA when Jason Tatum showed up.
Yeah, that is a good point. I think Jaylen Brown's contract is going to age pretty poorly. I think the Sixers are going to see that because he's due to make $70 million, I believe, next year, or if not, it's the year after. So $70 million for Jaylen Brown, is he worth it? I do think that if you look at some of the true statistics, the analytics behind it, it does seem like him off the court, the Celtics were better. But it's hard to say that also at the same time for a team that won over 50 games. So I don't know. I think Jaylen
And his
Brown,
clutch shots in the playoffs, we've seen him hit too.
yeah, and he could be clutch, no doubt about it. Um, yeah, for me, it's just for the Celtics. They're banking on Pritchard and they're banking on Ugo Gonzalez to take these next leaps. But if they don't, then it could be Brad Stevenson's job that's gone, and Joe Mazzulla potentially, if these guys don't pan out. I still think the Celtics are still going to be a top 4 seed, or at least a top 5 seed in the NBA. Like they're still not by any means a bad team, but as far as their window, it feels like they had their window that was like this, and now it's like this now at this point, especially after that move. So I just think it gave them a giant step back after that move.
I do think like Paul George is a bigger player and he's a more physical defender. And he had some good defensive moments against the Celtics, and from three. Um, so with Paul George, if he was actually taking steroids last year, that's a good thing for the Celtics. So I think also with adding Mitchell Robinson, I do think you have a bigger, more physical, and a better defensive team next year. Because imagine like you go up against a big team like the Thunder, and you can also play Walsh at shooting guard and Paul George at shooting guard. So like you can have a big physical lineup. You can have a good small ball lineup. So now when you go like Mitchell Robinson, Tatum, instead of Brown at small forward, I think Brown is kind of an undersized small forward. I would rather have Paul George there defensively. He gives you a little bit more size, I guess. It's just not as much offense, but then they're just looking for Tatum to be the de facto guy with the ball in his hands to make the right play because he's been improving his passing. So I think this year you want to I would bet on Tatum being like top 3 in the MVP race. And then also he's probably going to try and average a triple-double this year because he came back and he was pretty close. So if he's consistently like the point guard and Pritchard's better with him on the floor and it's more of a shooting team, space it out for Tatum. He was doing a really good job finding Kata, and I think he'll have a really good chemistry with Mitchell Robinson. I think Tatum's going for an MVP, and then he needed to break up with Jaylen Brown to do it because he's like, yes, I still want to win a finals MVP.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's no doubt he's going to be in the MVP race, especially if the Celtics do end up still winning 50 games. That roster around him now, a lot of people are undercrediting the Celtics at this point. I do think that with these moves that they made, they also re-signed Ron Harper and Kata as well. So they are still poised. And I think him being in the MVP conversation at this point, I think he's wide open for it. So I agree there.
I just feel like they'll have some nights where they're awful to watch, though.
I mean, they already have that now.
These games where he's just like bricking it, but it's going to be even worse.
Yeah, no
because
doubt.
It's Paul George
some of the
Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, and they just do this thing where they shoot 53s a game and make 4 of them in a postseason game. So the Celtics on their great nights, they're great to watch. Yeah, they have that too. Yeah, it's I don't know. The good basketball for the Celtics is going to look great, but bad basketball, it's going to look horrendous to watch. But that is the Celtics. I still think they are going to be top 4 in the East, just like I predicted last year.
And lose in the second round.
And blow it in the second round. The Hawks, they made some moves. Moving on to the Hawks, what have they done since we last left? Brought back McCollum, who single-handedly won the only game that the Knicks lost, or the only 2 games that the Knicks lost in the postseason in the Eastern Conference. They brought back Jock Landale, good for him. But then the big moves they got, they added Lou Dort from the Thunder. They take out, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. We tried to pronounce it off air. Ricochet went to the Mavericks.
Yeah.
Risacher, he's a Maverick now. Good for him. And then they also got Aaron Wiggins, who also joins him in that trade. Ryan Nimhard as well. And then Devin Carter they got from the Kings. So the Hawks making some moves, and I kind of like it, to be honest.
Yeah, they're a bigger, more physical team. Gave the Knicks a lot of trouble, so I definitely think the Hawks could be a team like Indiana that just comes out and shocks a ton of people. next season. And if you're the Pistons and you have to face the Hawks in the first round next year, that's your ultimate nightmare scenario. So I do think the Hawks are definitely going to be a tough out next year. Definitely love what they're doing, especially, I mean, Lou Dort in Atlanta. How good is that? I mean, that's
That's
awesome. If
good.
you don't like Lou Dort in Atlanta, OKC is a little bit more cringe because it's just him turning and mugging the sideline, and it's just this rich oil lady. Like, yeah, but like Lou Dort in Atlanta, it's gonna be like 2 Chains, Killer Mike, on the
Young Thug.
sideline. So I do think that's a much better fit, and they're gonna be a physical defensive team. I mean, they had probably the best series against the Knicks until losing by the biggest margin, one of the biggest margins in NBA history in the last game. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited for this Hawks team. Not too much else going on in Atlanta other than that, though.
Yeah, they're fun. I think at their ceiling is that they can win a playoff series, but they already surprised me with how they played against the Knicks in the postseason. I feel like they played them pretty hard. But outside of that, yeah, I do think they should be in the playoffs next year. Hopefully, they can get out of the play-in tournament, ideally. But Lou Dort's a great ad, and I like what they're doing there in Atlanta.
All right, then we have a 4-team trade to break down after that because we did the deal with the Hawks, and now the next team up is the Nets. And the biggest person you add is Julius Randle, a Net. My girlfriend was immediately like Julius Randle on the Nets as like a pretty casual basketball fan. That makes a lot of sense, and it does. You can definitely see him in the white Nets uniform going 5 for 23 on a given night with Michael Porter. Are you kidding me? How great is that? And then you get Julius Randle, and you get the number 26 pick, and then the Bulls get Nick Claxton from Brooklyn, and then the Hornets receive Nas Reeves and Mo Guy, or Goe, and then the Timberwolves get LaMelo Ball, Josh Green, and the number 33 overall pick, shocking everybody. And the Timberwolves go out there and trade LaMelo Ball, get Julius Randle sent to the Brooklyn Nets, and then they get Nas Reed back as well from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And a lot of people came out and said, well, who watches the Timberwolves and thinks that they're a LaMelo Ball from beating the San Antonio Spurs? I mean, a generational offensive talent to go along with another generational offensive talent. Where have we seen this before? Oh, wait, in Dallas with Kyrie and Luka Doncic, except they actually have a pretty solid supporting cast around them with bringing back DeSumo. They have Rudy Gobert, who actually has weirdly gotten better in the past few years, where before it seemed like he was a useless player, where he got cooked in the small ball era. Now we're heading back into a bigger league with more centers and physical big men, and Rudy Gobert has kind of aged himself back into relevancy in the NBA. And if you think that LaMelo Ball not on the Minnesota Timberwolves with Anthony Edwards and that's a nothing burger, like, no. Watch the shooting percentage for Con Kneppel next year, who got all of his points in the first 3 quarters and then gassed out. If you watched the Miami Heat game and you thought, oh, obviously this team will be fine with Cody White next year and Brandon Miller and no LaMelo Ball. Like, no, I think LaMelo Ball was the one making everyone on that team look a lot better they are. And then Con Kneppel looked winded in that play-in game. He was completely red in his face. He couldn't do anything defensively, and he looked overwhelmed in that game. And then they're like, you know what? Let's trade him for Nas Reed, Dorian Finney-Smith, and then also we're gonna bring in the hood version of Con Kneppel as well and trade for Grayson Allen as well. So now you have Grayson Allen and Con Kneppel, Royce O'Neal, but you lose Miles Bridges, who goes to the Suns, who is a pretty big player for you as well, Josh Green, and LaMelo Ball, and then you re-sign Cody White. So I think that's actually a loss overall for the Hornets.
Yeah, I will say I think the Hornets got a pretty good haul for LaMelo. Getting Nas Reed is a big ad. You add Grayson Allen there; he's a good shooter there. Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal. They got some picks. It seems like they're kind of rewiring their team. I think LaMelo Ball in Minnesota is going to be electric. Do I think they can get over the hump with LaMelo Ball? I don't really know there. I feel like they still have some pretty decent size even after losing Naz Reid. They still have Rudy Gobert, but losing Julius Randle too, I think that could hurt them size wise. Julius, as Shanley mentioned, like Julius Randle on the Nets is hilarious, and that's where he's probably going to go to die, unfortunately. But the Hornets, I mean, they got 3 first-round picks, they got 3 second-round picks from there, they got a bunch of picks from it, 4 total picks from it, and then LaMelo's out of there. Now they have more flexibility. So the Hornets, I don't hate the trade for them. I do think that the Timberwolves are the ones that prevailed the most successful from it. You lose Naz Reid, which is a loss, but getting rid of Julius Randle, that's a win. And then getting LaMelo Ball, they're going to be a lot more exciting. But Hornets, do I think they're better than they were beginning of this offseason? No. But it seems like they're building around Concanople now at this point, which will that be a mistake or will that be a success? I guess we'll see.
This is like you have a generational player on the Hornets and you just trade him because he pulled Bam's ankle out from under him. He's immature. Like, okay, it's the modern NBA, and then also your team hasn't been relevant
Ever?
ever. You were relevant with Gerald Wallace. Oh, physical, tough team, and like when you were relevant, you were just beating people up. Like LaMelo was beloved in the cities. He brings you to a play-in tournament. Loses to Philadelphia, but like if you look at that play-in game and think, oh, we should build around Concanople instead of LaMelo Ball, who's a tall point guard, super unorthodox. Like the Hornets deserve another 20, 30 years of irrelevancy for this trade. It's just the fact that you finally get a star again and then you immediately ship him out as soon as your team starts getting successful. And then also a journeyman who had been there from the start, Miles Bridges. You also lose him. He was kind of the heart and soul of this team. And then also Brandon Miller is gambling. Like, if you watch Brandon Miller play, he looks like a player that's gambling. And then Naz Reid, like, he's a really good player, but what is Naz Reid going to look like in Minnesota? And then you're also betting on Cody White, who's like a 6-man of the year guy. How often does it really work out when you're like, oh, yeah, we're moving forward in Atlanta and we're going to make Dennis Schroeder our starting point guard? It never works out when these NBA teams try and make these 6-man type guys their starting point guard. Like, no. Cody White's job is to come be a microwave off of the bench. That's it, not your starting point guard. The defense thinks they have a break because LaMelo's on the floor, and then Cody White hits them with the burst of energy. Now that they're going to game plan for him, like, you're going to have a game, it's like, you're probably going to be, again, in the play-in tournament with this team, and I don't think it gets you over the hump in the East getting rid of LaMelo Ball. And I think having LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards is that's one of the best duos you're going to have in the West at this point. They're going to be right there with the Lakers and the Spurs and the Thunder. It's probably going to be those 4 teams since the Nuggets can't figure out their roster issues now.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Timberwolves got a lot more exciting. I like LaMelo on the Timberwolves a lot. I think it's good for the NBA to see him get out of Charlotte. Charlotte's roster definitely did get worse. Maybe they have a little bit more depth than they had before, but they don't really have that true scorer anymore with LaMelo being gone or that de facto number 1. So off-season wise, I can talk myself into the Hornets having a pretty poor off-season, mostly because they don't really have a true identity anymore because LaMelo was the face of their franchise the last 6 years. And sure, he maybe was immature and, was a hazard on the roads, but him being gone now you're relying on Concanople, who this is his first year. We see people have second-year slumps all the time. Kobe White was good in Chicago. He played well for you when you traded for him, but Hornets now they kind of remind me of the 2019 Nets right before they got Kevin Durant and Kyrie and James Harden. Like, they're just a bunch of guys. Are they going to be a fun team to watch? Maybe. They could be, but they're just not going to make it very far in the postseason. Maybe they are the 8th seed and they lose in the first round, but that's kind of their ceiling at this point.
Yeah, and what player on this team do you look at and you're like, whoa, look out. Look out for Brandon
Naz Reid.
Miller. He might
Naz
go
Reid.
under on his prop tonight. Naz Reid. Yeah, Naz Reid is the only player, but like I feel like Naz Reid in Charlotte is just a different aura though.
100%. Him in Minnesota was pretty great. It's going to be weird seeing him in Charlotte, but I think I'll still be rooting for him in that case. What do you think about Julius Randle in Brooklyn though? Because I know he's a part of that package as well. The Nets now have him, Michael Porter Jr., and then let me see the rest of that roster built out. Um,
They
they
signed
got
Josh Minot, Day'Ron Sharp, and Mortez Wagner. So I honestly think that the Nets are gonna be a really good bad team. Like Michael Porter Jr. and Julius Randle is just like a throwback type bad duo. It's like when you're playing at the Y and there's two old guys who are like has-beens and they take all the shots on the team. I mean, no one else is going to have any usage after Julius Randle and Michael Porter are done with the ball.
That's the only ball they need. They're going to need to get 2 balls for this one.
But I think they
I mean, they have more size now, but they'll be fun. I like Mortez Wagner there. That's a nice ad. Stealing him from the Magic. They got him as well. But just the rest of that roster is pretty weak. I don't see them even making a play-in tournament. I think they're going to be a 35-win team, even with the addition of Randall. Maybe they're more fun to watch because they were pretty miserable to watch last year, but they just aren't. They don't tell me that they don't. I don't look at that team and go, "That's a play-in tournament team." I see that roster and I'm like, "Oh, this is a fun bad team." Like you mentioned, like 35 wins is probably their ceiling.
Yeah, we'll see. Julius Randle and Michael Porter. That might be a fun game to go see. And then after that, we have the Bulls. They signed Zach Collins again. And then they acquired Nick Claxton. Norman Powell decided to sign another deal in the NBA, 2-year deal. But then they lose Colin Sexton and Anthony Simmons, who also is on the Philadelphia Sixers. And right now, as if they didn't have enough microwave guards on that team, they also have now Anthony Simmons, VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey, and Jaylen Brown, thanks to the Bulls not re-signing him. So
Thanks,
that
Chicago.
Vucevic trade really worked out for the Celtics, didn't it?
Yeah.
Trading Simons.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Simons was nice for them too. Yeah. Bulls didn't really do much. I feel like they're still the same team. Still no identity. Norman Powell, good for him, still getting his money. How old? Norman Powell has got to be in his. How old is Norman Powell at this point? I feel like he's been in the league for a million years now. But yeah, still just kind of a nothing burger for Chicago. Maybe their draft will pay off, but otherwise, I just don't see that doing too much. And Norman Powell is now 33, which in the NBA I feel like is pretty old. So
Yeah, he's like a
nothing burger
40-year-old,
for Chicago.
33-year-old, where you get him confused with Eric Gordon, so you think he's a lot older than he is.
Well, it's kind of like Harrison Barnes too. Like Harrison Barnes, we've seen Harrison Barnes play for like 20 years, but yet he's only like 32. It's the same idea.
Yeah, he's been in the league forever. And then the Cavs didn't do much. Additions, no one. They lost Larry Nance Jr., they lost Keon Ellis, and as if Jaylen Brown and Anthony Simons, VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey wasn't enough, the Philadelphia 76ers also added Dean Wade and stole him from the Cleveland Cavaliers. So they are building a really good team in Philadelphia. And then I feel like if you're I'm blanking on their coach's name right now because I'm like out of basketball right now. If you're their head coach, he was the one who coached the Raptors.
Nick Nurse.
Nick Nurse. If you're Nick Nurse, you have to be looking at this team like the 2019 Raptors team. Like, wow, I have Simons off the bench, who's a microwave. Edgecombe. We have Dean Wade now. Embiid is still on this team, and we also have Maxey and Edgecombe, who played really well. And if Edgecombe takes a step forward, seems like they just have so many good players on this team.
Oh yeah, the Sixers. That's why, like, if LeBron adds to that team, is it equivalent to like a Golden State Warriors Kevin Durant scenario? I don't know, but it's probably the most disgusting roster ever assembled in the post-competitive balance tax era, the apron era of the NBA. Because LeBron said he might sign a minimum potentially there for him. You'd have VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, Jaylen Brown, LeBron. And then you have Dean Wade. You have Anthony Simmons there. And there's more people on that roster that fill that out. That team is just ridiculous. At this point, it would be a failure for them to win anything less than 60 games at this point.
Yeah, so be definitely interesting, but yeah, that's the most interesting part of the Cavaliers offseason. And then Donovan Mitchell, I was surprised to see he signed a 4-year extension because he said the cafeteria in Cleveland is very nice. So
there we go. Good for him. He likes that Ohio air.
But yeah, thoughts on Cleveland? I guess any thoughts? Not
What
really.
What are the thoughts? The fact that they got worse and the fact that they signed Donovan Mitchell to a $273 million deal. So now I believe, if my math is correct, he's going to be making $70 million very soon. And, I mean, Donovan Mitchell's great. Don't get me wrong. I like him a lot. But he's going to have a player option in 2030 for $76 million.
Oh
That's
God.
ridiculous. Yeah, it's a hefty contract. Also, I'm going to warn you, we have a haboob going on right now. So if I lose power, that is why. But it's raining pretty hard right now, just so you know, in the city of Phoenix, the city of rain, apparently.
Cloud seeding's
But yeah,
hard this week.
Yeah, yeah, literally. But yeah, Cleveland, the addition, what is there to talk about other than the fact that Donovan Mitchell is going to be the highest paid player in the NBA, and you haven't made any additions to your team when the Knicks just kind of rolled them at that point. They definitely needed another piece, and they haven't done anything. They're just sitting on their hands, hoping that the Celtics and the Sixers and the Knicks and all the teams that are better than them stay where they are, and that's just not going to happen.
All right, that is the Cavs. Then we have the Mavericks up next. They re-signed Musa to a 2-year deal, and then they add Santi Aldama, joins via trade with the Grizzlies. They get Tarak Borovic, Zachary Rasacher, and then Marcus Sasser in a trade with the Pistons. But they lose Marvin Bagley III.
Oh, no.
They lose Chris Middleton in a
No.
sign and trade to the Wizards because the Wizards didn't have enough wash players. So now they have Anthony Davis and Chris Middleton and Trae Young. So that'll be a fun team. And then they get Ryan Nembhard, also leaves with the trade with the Hawks. So the Mavericks get a bunch of nothing except for Cooper Flag apparently is 7 feet tall now, or he's 6'11" with a 7'2" wingspan. So he was a player that was playing like a point guard. So they now have their great white hope to go up against the Snowtime Lakers, which is a controversy we'll get to later. But now that's really the biggest story for them, and they're going to get Kyrie Irving back. So now we're going to have the two Duke guys going at it, and we'll see if it goes better than when it was Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum. So hopefully that works out. But I do think Cooper Flag, being that tall with him and Kyrie Irving, they might get back into the conversation in the playoffs and be definitely a tough out. You're not going to want to play Cooper Flag for 7 games in a 2-week span.
It sucks because the West is so loaded, but can I see the Mavericks being a 6, 7, or 8th seed? For sure. I think they're definitely play-in eligible. I think they started to piece things together a little bit towards the end of the season, but they made some nice additions. It's going to be interesting to see with their new coach, who's coming fresh out of college, was a part of Michigan. What can they get out of Ricochet, who so far has been, let's just call it what he is, a bust so far. Can they unlock him a little bit? Sometimes the fits can play a big part, and Atlanta haven't really had a great part there. So maybe they can unlock him, and he can be solid for them. Doesn't really have great shooting mechanics. Isn't really an amazing defender, but is a body, and if they can unlock him, that'd be good. But Dallas, I can see them. They're in that play-in tournament now, and maybe before they weren't. So I would say it's an upgraded offseason for Dallas in that regard.
But in other regards, it's not. They are moving American Airlines, or the Mavericks are moving to Valley View, which is in North Dallas, and they're moving to a mall area where they're trying to build a I guess, gentrified area, because if one thing Dallas doesn't have enough of, it's urban sprawl. So they are going to the former Valley View Mall site in far North Dallas. So Dallas is going to be the only team with none of their major sports downtown. So you're going to have to drive to um, you're gonna have to drive essentially over in between Fort Worth to go see the Cowboys in Jerry World, and then you have to drive there as well to go see the Rangers play, and then you have to go to North Dallas to see the Mavericks, and I think the Stars are moving as well out of American Airlines, so they're going to be the only major city in America with none of their sports teams actually in the city. And Dallas like has a lot of traffic, so it's not like, oh yeah, it's super easy to go there, and they don't have, I guess, the safest public transportation in the world either. So people were upset about the Bears moving to Chicago or moving to Indiana, but I think this one's a lot worse because it was the only thing
Yeah,
downtown in Dallas.
yeah, for sure. And Dallas, great city, but as far as the sprawl, do you know exactly like what area they're going to be in at this point with their new stadium?
Yeah,
If
just
that's
look
known
up
yet.
Valley View Mall, Dallas Mavericks, North Dallas.
So they're going to move north. So I mean, I just don't understand like in the modern NBA, really just not even modern NBA, modern sports in general. The sports cities that are thriving are the sports cities that have their sports team in the middle of the city. Boston has TD Garden and Fenway Park planted in the city. Most of these cities nowadays are going to have all the ballparks in one area if they can coordinate it that way. That's how they have it in like Kansas City. I know they have the ballparks right there together. I just don't understand why they wouldn't do that. Phoenix, the team that struggles the most are the teams like the Suns or the Cardinals that are in Glendale instead of downtown Phoenix, where the Suns and Diamondbacks still have pretty decent turnout. So it's like, why would you move your team to North Dallas when Dallas is probably the worst of all the sprawls out of any city in America, even worse than LA, honestly, with how bad their traffic is and how congested it is. I would say Dallas is arguably worse at this point. And at least LA has their city, their sports in the city, SoFi, and with the Staples Center.
And they have the beach too. Uh, like Dallas is a conflicting city for me because of stuff like this, where you have to go to essentially. I'm blanking on the name that's like in between Fort Worth and
Probably Arlington.
Arlington. Yeah, Arlington. You have to. I kept thinking Irvine for some reason, but
It's
you
close.
have Arlington in between Fort Worth, and Fort Worth is cool. You have the stockyards there, and Sundance Square is cool. But I think the World Cup taught people that Dallas actually does have the potential to make a really cool city. It's just not walkable at all, and everything is so spread out. Where they have the potential to make a very cool downtown, similar to something like New York or LA, and like the you have like neighborhoods that are pretty good, but they also get kind of sketchy at night. Like Deep Ellum is like a fun place, but you see shootings and like giant fights break out there. And you don't have like this great concentrated area downtown where Dallas has a lot of potential. It's just increasing the sprawl, like going less centralized. I feel like Dallas could benefit a little bit more from centralizing their downtown instead of decompartmentalizing, because they're trying to essentially build another entertainment district in North Dallas. And at this point, they're just going to build all the way up to Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much at this point. I just I don't understand why. I just that move just doesn't make any sense to me at this point for them to make that move, especially when you're already like right next door. Arlington has AT&T Stadium and Globe Life right there. So realistically, if even if they just moved to Arlington, you would have all of them right there because outside of the, I mean, actually, yeah, because if you built the ballpark, you'd have the Stars there too. So it's like, if you're in Arlington, then you have all your sports cities in Arlington. And I'm not sure what the drive is from downtown Dallas, but You'd have them all right there in one central location, which would make it easy for everybody to go and see there. You'd have your sports hub essentially, but instead now it's in North Dallas, which just doesn't make sense.
Well, it's because Miriam Adelson is the owner in the team, and they want to make the essentially a massive stadium casino together. So they want to make a massive entertainment district, and they're pushing for casinos and gambling in Texas. So it would essentially be like their own casino stadium, and it's a massive project they've been planning, but it kind of relies on, Texas actually going that route with gambling. So it's kind of the Adelson's vision for the Dallas Mavericks and why they moved out of downtown, because I don't think even American Airlines Arena is that old. I think it's just because the Adelsons preferred to move them to North Dallas. But yeah, you're right. Like, you could at least just have, like, okay, Arlington's our sports center. They also have Six Flags there too.
Yeah.
It's like a lot to do. And it's like in between Fort Worth and Dallas. So, like, okay, I guess that makes sense because it's more centrally located between the cities.
Well, even like just as a city builder in general, right? The sports cities that are thriving are the reason why it's so great for have it downtown is people live downtown. They can walk to the game, have unlimited amount of beer and food and whatever beverages they want, walk back to their house. There's just more benefit there than them going to drive an hour or half an hour or whatever it is for them. Have they're more limited on how much beer they'll be able to consume. Come back. I just think like the cities that thrive are the ones that have it in the central part of the city, so that the people who live in the city can easily navigate. But maybe they know something we don't. I don't know.
Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of thoughts on the arena there. I don't like them moving out of Central Dallas, as you said. I'd rather just move them to Arlington, make everything central there, and then the Mavericks, or after the Mavericks, we have the Nuggets, and we're kind of just, it's sad at this point is how to describe it. They sign Tyus Jones again, add Marvin Bagley, and then Tim Hardaway is gone, so they're essentially waving the white flag until they potentially have a mid-season trade and trade Jamal Murray for someone. So at this, for Derek White and Paul George, is probably going to be the trade. But you have essentially the Nuggets waving the white flag on Jokic's career. You have Jokic, who says, I don't want to sign a deal right now. I would like to sign with the Nuggets, but I don't know if he's waiting for a max extension or he's just looking at this Nuggets team saying, yeah, I'm probably not going to win this team, so I am just waiting till I can go play with Luka Doncic and the Lakers, and they can trade Austin Reeves for me in a sign and trade to
Yeah,
make the salaries match.
it's so sad. It's crazy to think of a team that was so close the last couple of years, especially like they just won the title how many years ago, and now at this point, their big addition after losing to the Timberwolves is signing Marvin Bagley, one of the biggest busts of the last decade. Bringing back Tyus Jones, cool, we like that, but you let Tim Hardaway walk, and now this Nuggets roster, which already didn't have a lot of depth to begin with, has even less depth now. So you're really just relying on Joker at this point. And he's getting older at this point. He's going to be 31, going on 32 this upcoming season. Like, what's exactly the vision for this team and how are they going to build? At this point, it is kind of that conversation like you mentioned with Jamal Murray, but you moved on from Michael Porter Jr., and that seems like that was a win for you. What's the deal with Aaron Gordon? Are you going to move on from him soon? Like, at what point does this just completely blow up and it's now just a rebuild? Because I feel like that's where it's headed over the next year or two if they don't get their shit together. And it sounds like they're not going to.
Yeah, so it's one of the saddest teams of the offseason because Aaron Gordon has been injured, and I think it's a little late to trade Jamal Murray. So I think we're kind of just going to slowly see the Nuggets fade kind of into irrelevance, where maybe they win a playoff series and then are just perpetually getting knocked out in the second round. But hey, at least we did get to see Jokic win a title. Kevin Garnett only won one ring. Dirk Nowitzki only won one ring. So I guess we have that in solitude. After that, we have the Detroit Pistons, who kind of went on a wash. I think they got slightly better because they traded for John Collins in a three-team deal and ended up trading Isaiah Stewart, and then Tobias Harris left, which is honestly an addition by subtraction, especially with how disappointing he's been in the playoffs. And then they also get Isaiah Joe in a trade with the Thunder, who I liked a lot. And then you get Tarian Prince and Gary Harris, who joined from the Bucks. So overall, I do think the Detroit Pistons got better. I don't like Tobias Harris. I think every team that he's on, he ends up cursing in the playoffs, especially the Philadelphia 76ers. Then he just didn't show up when he needed to again after playing pretty well actually in that Cleveland Cavaliers series, and then he was nowhere to be found in Game 7. So now you get rid of him, get someone athletic in the front course like John Collins, and yeah, who knows what you can do with this team. And I think Isaiah Joe will be a solid player now that he has some room to grow outside of the Thunders. But anytime he did play against the Spurs, I thought he played well.
Yeah, I like Isaiah Joe a lot. That's a nice addition. Tarian Prince, he's played for a million teams. Going back to Detroit, we like that. John Collins, he can be a bucket, so I don't hate that addition either. The big news that I hear that could be looming, and I don't know what's real and what's not, but rumors are that they're in the talks to potentially trade for Kevin Durant. I don't know how I feel about that trade personally. I don't think anybody should trade for Kevin Durant at this point. We've seen that fail for Phoenix and Houston and Brooklyn at this point. I just don't think you bother there, but they seem to be in the sweepstakes for Kevin Durant, so that might be their big move. If they get Kevin Durant, they're still not better than the Sixers at this point. They still need another scorer, but I just feel like you can get that without going for Kevin Durant, a guy who's 37. So that's kind of the big thing. But the Pistons at this point, addition by subtraction, I think they got marginally better, but overall, I think they're still the same team at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, the Pistons got marginally better. I think they pretty much stayed the same. I think they'll be a little bit better just with experience. Hopefully, Jalen Duren remembers how to play basketball in the playoffs next year. That'd be great. But trading for Kevin Durant, I don't like that. I think there's only one valid trade for Kevin Durant in the NBA, and that is Zion Williamson for Kevin Durant. Because imagine Zion Williamson on the Rockets with Şengün, Steven Adams, Amon Thompson, and Marcus Smart. And that's not the funniest NBA team in history. And Fred VanVleet is there still. And then you just have all of these big wings like Tari Eason, who are just kind of like knuckleheads who can't hit threes. And you have Ime Udoka coaching the team. I'm like, if that's not the funniest team in the league, I don't know what is. So if they trade Kevin Durant, that's the only one. But it's honestly funnier with Kevin Durant because he's in Houston. He's from Austin, and it's Kevin Durant has kind of just made his bed in Houston, and him finishing his career with the Rockets kind of just sums up his career where he could have stayed with Golden State. They could have won like 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7 rings. Everybody laughed because the joke's really funny. But no, he's like, I want to go to Brooklyn with Kyrie and James Harden. They both get hurt. And then he's like, okay, I want to go to Phoenix with Devin Booker. Okay, that doesn't work out. Okay, I'm going to go to Houston because I want to be there. And then you're playing with Şengün, who's probably the worst NBA player to watch in history, and followed up by Amon Thompson, who's also one of the most painful players to watch in NBA history, where everything just looks way harder than it needs to be.
Yeah. This Rockets team, I don't know if the NBA has an equivalent to NFL Hard Knocks, but if they do, or maybe this is the first season they do it, the Houston Rockets. Make them a Hard Knocks team. Just put a camera in the locker room from the preseason all the way until when they're inevitably eliminated. And that would be peak cinema.
And
But
you
the
would think
Rockets,
if you hear the Rockets sign Marcus Smart, how long do you think they're signing him for?
a year.
Right? But no, they
Nope.
signed him for 2 years. Not only did they sign him, they signed him for 2 years.
Just had to have him. And
They
Marcus
had to
Smart
have him.
just had to have him. I mean, and the Marcus Smart that we saw in the Lakers too, like he is looking pretty tired. He's not the same player he was in Boston, not even what he was in Memphis, to be completely honest. So signing him for 2 years, we don't love that. He wasn't great with LA last year either. So yeah, Houston, I don't really know what they're doing, but they are a fun team, maybe for the wrong reasons. So for that, I support it. And they got Bogdan Bogdanovic as well.
And then the Warriors. They didn't sign anyone. They lost Quentin Post to the Grizzlies, so now they have Quentin Post and Zach Edey, one of the most exciting front courts in the league, if you tell me. Also with Cam Boozer. I mean, look out. And then they re-sign Charles Bassey, Al Horford, DeAnthony Melton, and Kristaps Porzingis. And they signed Porzingis and Al Horford to 2-year deals. That's all they did.
Why? That was it. But apparently, they're in the sweepstakes for LeBron, so maybe they get LeBron. But even if they get LeBron, I still am not sold on the Warriors. They're really old. It's proven the last pretty much since their title, they're just going to get hurt. They're going to get banged up. Steph is getting only older at this point, and the only way this team is fun to watch next year is if they get LeBron. Because can these guys win one more ring? But at this point, like Golden State, we're just kind of waiting for Steph to retire for them to actually do a proper rebuild. At this point, they had to convince Steve Kerr to come back, and now he's coming back for at least next year. But I mean, the wheels are about to fall off for the Warriors, and even if it's LeBron, like it's just the last hurrah at this point. It's the last dance at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree there. I think the Warriors, I mean, you're banking on Porzingis, who's injured, and it's really on Jimmy Butler. And you could have had a chance to maybe make it to the second round if Jimmy Butler stays healthy next season. But yeah, just Jimmy Butler, like it all depends on his health and Porzingis. If they're all healthy, though, I think they'll be interesting at least.
For sure.
Like you can't
Yeah.
say they're a bad team if they're all fully healthy, but like Kristaps Porzingis got this weird like mystery super long COVID or super AIDS, some people were saying, and he was just sick, couldn't move in his hotel bed in pain. So that can't be fun when you're that guy. But Al Horford in that playing game against the Clippers showed he still got a little bit of it. I think he hit like what 5 threes in the fourth quarter, and like he went off
Yeah.
at one moment. So I don't know. I think they'll be okay, but probably just another sad Warriors season next year. The Rockets we pretty much covered because, we talked about them signing Marcus Smart. Nothing else happened outside of them signing Tari Eason to a 5-year deal. I mean, that must get you excited if you're a Rockets fan, right? Woo! We got Tari Eason for 5 more years. We're going to be great.
Beautiful. Great to hear. Bogdan Bogdanovic, 2 years for Marcus Smart, just in case one wasn't enough, but easily the funniest NBA team that currently exists right now. So we've covered everything Houston-wise, but I'm excited to see what this team is or the dysfunction. I'm excited for the burner accounts. All things Houston I'm a fan of.
And then Indiana didn't re-sign anybody. They only lost Cam Jones and Micah Potter, so it doesn't matter. And then they added Larry Nance and Kelly Oubre, which is actually kind of funny. Kelly Oubre and Tyrese Halliburton. That's a nightmare in the playoffs to go up against, chirping at you all series.
Yeah, Pacers are fun. I like where they are. I know Tyrese Halliburton was trying to recruit LeBron, and LeBron's probably not going there, but they're a fun team. Him coming off of injury, this is a team that's still very much in the mix, a team that I feel like a lot of us are going to overlook, but they're fun. And I like the addition of Larry Nance. He's a good role player. And Kelly Oubre, that's another good role player. So watch out for Indiana. I like their moves so far, and maybe they're not done.
And then the Clippers took some time in the offseason to get some dick, meaning they traded Kawhi Leonard for Grady Dick and Brandon Ingram. So they got Dick Ingram in the playoffs. And then they trade Kawhi Leonard, and they also signed Rui Hachimura as well. So another young wing to go along with Darius Garland. So that kind of makes sense if you're the Clippers building a younger team. And now Kawhi Leonard just made the Raptors the most confusingly dangerous team in the Eastern Conference. Because if we get robotic locked in Kawhi Leonard where he's fully healthy and ready to go and then is going out there with their big physical young forwards, and I do think the Raptors have a lot of good young talent on this team to go around Kawhi. I do think that the Raptors could be a team that sees the Jaylen Brown 76ers, and it could be deja vu for when the 76ers had J.J. Redick, Tobias Harris, Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid, and then Kawhi Leonard again in the second round beats the Philadelphia 76ers, and we get deja vu, and it's like these series start repeating over and over again. Can you see that happening?
I don't know. You know what? Yes, I can see that happening because honestly, that Raptors team, they played really competitively against the Cavs, and you had Kawhi Leonard, who, I mean, we talk about like 2016 Steph, we talk about 2013 LeBron, 01 Shaq, all of those players, but like 2019 Kawhi Leonard's playoff run is one of the greatest playoff runs in NBA history. And if we can see that again with him, even if they don't win the title, even if they just beat the Sixers, that to me is the Super Bowl at this point, or better yet, the NBA championship. So I'm here for it. And whether or not that happens or not, I will be there to support it because Raptors are fun. Kawhi Leonard, when he's locked in, is a top 5 player in the league. So I'm ready for that arc to occur.
Yeah, he essentially ended Joel Embiid's career because that was the only shot Joel Embiid had at a championship. Like, what are the odds that the 76ers go on to beat the Bucks? I would say decent, especially with Jimmy Butler, what he was able to do against Giannis with the Heat. So I think that would have been a good matchup there. So I do think that this trade, the Clippers have gotten younger. I think they'll be a competitive team, and I like them adding Rui Hachimura. I know, the Peter Griffin meme where this shade or more, this shade no for the Lakers. They had to get rid of Rui Hachimura this offseason. So unfortunately, now he's with the Clippers, but this is going to be a fun young team, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Roy Hachimura stays in LA but goes to the Clippers. Clippers have an interesting core now with this point. It looks like they're kind of building around Darius Garland at this point. They still have some nice players there, some older players, but it seems like the last couple of years it's been the Kawhi Leonards of the world, the Paul Georges of the world. They had Nicholas Batum on this team. They had Bradley Beal. They pretty much collected all these older, not so great players. They had Ben Simmons on this team at one point, and now they're moving away from that. Players that are, I don't know, have the bright lights ahead of them, maybe not behind them. So for that, I support the Clippers offseason. They're getting younger.
Then there's the Lakers offseason. Stephen A has these moments where he says things out loud, and they make sense when they're saying him. I mean, him saying, I can say this, no team with their best 3 players being white in NBA history has won a championship. Is that a correct message? Yes, but is it the right messenger when he was also the one who said Shohei Ohtani can't be the face of baseball because he doesn't speak English? No. So you have people like Emmanuel Acho trying to like out woke Stephen A. Smith, who's a little bit himself, and then everyone's piling on saying Stephen A. is racist, but like he's actually not because he stated a fact because no team in NBA history has won with their best 3 players being white. Like, has he said racist things before? But it's not factual. What he said about Shohei Ohtani, baseless, not factual. I do think this one is different because you can look at NBA history and be like, yeah, I mean, Celtics when they were good, like Bill Russell was their best player. Larry Bird, Robert Parrish was one of their best players. Dennis Johnson was really good on that team. Kevin McHale was the 6th man. So you
Reggie
go
Lewis.
through NBA history and you look at it. So did you think that, or did you think it was a lot of people trying to just on social media too much and like, no, he's actually, if you listen to him, he's stating a historical fact about the NBA.
Well, look, what are we on this show but not history buffs, right? If we pulled up all 80 NBA champions and you get rid of the fucking 40s because those don't count, that's like the 1800s in baseball.
They couldn't.
Then you're right. I mean, the 60s Celtics, who was there? Bill Russell. 70s, we have Wilt Chamberlain with the Lakers. Okay, that makes sense. And then you go like 80s, we had Robert Parrish, we had Magic Johnson. We had in the 80s or the 90s, we had Michael Jordan. We had Kobe and Shaq. Like all of NBA history, there has always been at least one great black guy on the team as well. And maybe he said it and it was shocking, but when I read that, I'm like, yeah, he's right. The Lakers aren't like, and I get that Luka Doncic is really great and Walker Kessler's a great player and so is Austin Reeves, but like The Lakers are not going to be hosting I keep calling it a Lombardi because I'm thinking football. They're not going to be hosting a Larry O'Brien with 3 white guys in their fucking swim trunks right off, fresh off of Long Beach. Like, it's just not going to happen. And also, like, with this Lakers team, like, even if we remove the white, creamy crop of talent they have at this point, um, they do the same thing every offseason where they bring in a bunch of, mid-level exception players, and then they all leave. I'm looking at this list, and like I've seen this list before with the Lakers. Rory Hachimura goes, DeAndre Ayton goes, Jackson Hayes goes, Luke Kennard goes, Mark Smart goes, in comes Matisse Thybulle, Zaire Williams, Quentin Grimes, Jaden Hardy, Kevin Looney, Colin Sexton. I'm not even going to try to pronounce Sandro Lashvi.
Yeah.
And then Walker Kessler, who I do think is a nice ad for them. That's a nice big for him. But Stephen A. Smith didn't say anything wrong. He was right. It's just rage bait on the internet, and people are freaking out. But, like, biblically accurate Stephen A. Smith. He is completely right with what he's saying. And I stand by it.
It's crazy, like, watching, like, the wrong people call him racist and the wrong people call him, like, not racist. It's like the people calling him racist are, like, Emmanuel Acho because they like Luka Doncic for some reason. Like, he was getting into an argument with Kendrick Perkins, like, actually, he's, like, leading the league in, like, deflections and steals. Like, it doesn't mean that he's not, like, a chair on defense. You can go right by him. It's like he improved as a defender last year, but he's not a liability. And you can't look at this Lakers team and be like, oh my God, this team is going to the NBA Finals. Like, no, it's just Luka and Austin Reeves. Is Austin Reeves as good as Kyrie Irving?
No.
Like, is the combination of Walker Kessler better than what they had in Dallas with their bigs? Like, I guess he's technically a little bit better. But like, I don't think like this is gonna be a team that's gonna make it to an NBA Finals. Like, this isn't gonna be a team that's gonna compete with the Thunder. They're not gonna compete with the Spurs, and honestly, I don't think they would even beat the Timberwolves at this point. So you have to look at it and see like Walker Kessler. Like, Walker Kessler's good and he's played well with the Jazz, but like, Stephen A is right.
Yeah, he is right. Also, Walker Kessler is coming off of a massive surgery. He was out pretty much all of this season. So how does that affect him next year? He's 7'2", but he doesn't strike me as a guy that is going to be able to defend the Wembys of the world. You have maybe if they make it to the finals, like if the Sixers make it, the Joel Embiids of the world, the Jokic's of the world, the Chet Holmgrens of the world. Like, maybe he can go head to head with Chet, but like, I don't see Walker Kessler and think, oh yes, this is the guy that's going to contain Victor Wembanyama and all these other guys in the West. Like, no, it can even defend Rudy Gobert at this point. Is Rudy Gobert going to just bully him? Like, this Lakers team, like Walker Kessler, no disrespect to him, but I feel like of all the players they signed, he's probably the most unproven, especially coming off of an injury. I don't really know exactly the full trade details on what they got for him, but basically just a few picks. But this Lakers team's fun. Like, are they going to make it to the playoffs? Sure. Are they going to be like a 5 or 6 seed? Sure. Can they win a playoff round? Sure. But this is also the Lakers we're talking about, a team that's historically arguably the best team in NBA history outside of maybe the Celtics. But yeah, everything that he said is correct. They're not going to be. This roster does not scare anybody in the Western Conference.
Yeah, they're the snow time Lakers, and I guess it's like the modern NBA now, but like, you look at these people like so upset about it. Like, no, I think you're just online too much, because what did he say that was historically inaccurate? Like, you kind of get where he's coming from. It came out pretty wrong with Shohei Ohtani. That one is like the one thing you can point at with Stephen A. Smith where you're like, whoa. Like, that is pretty on the nose. Like, he's just saying, yeah, he doesn't speak English. He can't be the face of baseball. But Shohei Ohtani's literally so good that he transcends that language barrier. You had Alex Pereira in the UFC, who is kind of the face of the UFC for a couple years, and he doesn't speak English. So it's like, that one was a little bit, but like, saying that no team in NBA history is going to win with 3 white players as their best players, like, yeah, it's the NBA.
And here's another question. Like, Has there ever been three white boys that have made it to an Eastern or Western Conference Finals? Just those three guys. Because I feel like even if you just do the top three players being white, has there ever been one that made it to a finals or an Eastern or Western Conference Finals? I feel like the answer to that is still no. I just don't think we've accumulated such Caucasian rosters in the NBA like this, like we've seen for this Lakers team, maybe ever. Like this is a pretty Caucasian Lakers team. So yeah, they'll still be good, but they're not making the finals or winning it.
Yeah, I just think people got a little bit too offended about it, and people are just a little bit too sensitive for being sensitive. It's like he mentions like one thing, like yeah, just because he's mentioning their race doesn't necessarily mean that he's discriminating against them when there's literally a stat to back him up. And then people try to compare this. They're like, oh, this is like the same thing as saying you can't win a Super Bowl with a black quarterback.
Except
No.
for no, because here's the thing: like, what? Who won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago? The city that's known for cheesesteaks. Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts literally just won a Super Bowl at this point,
Russell
relatively
Wilson.
recently. Russell Wilson has done it, and there's been several black quarterbacks who have brought them at least to a Super Bowl. Cam Newton,
Eli
as another
Manning.
example. Yeah, Eli Manning, Donovan McNabb did it. Like maybe they didn't win the Super Bowl, but like black quarterbacks have absolutely, and technically Patrick Mahomes is black, so you can count him too. So like, yeah, I mean, there's evidence in the NFL that that's not true. This there's evidence in the Lakers scenario that there's never been three white players all together that have been the three best players to win the championship. Unless if we go back to like the Bullets era and like the Rochester Royals type teams when other players couldn't drink out of the water fountain. Like let's just
Yeah.
go there because we're going to. Like that the only time that the three best white players in the NBA all on the same team won a championship was back when the other race wasn't allowed to do certain things that now they can. So different time, and I'm glad that era is over. But that's the only time in the NBA that that's ever existed.
Yeah, this isn't like Babe Ruth like playing for. This isn't like Babe Ruth coming out for the Yankees and then being a great player. Like, trust me, Walker Kessler is not Babe Ruth. And this is Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is European too, so it's different, I guess, a little bit. But you can't look at Austin Reeves and be like, "Oh yeah, that's a number two on a championship team." Like, no, he is a three at best, but probably a fourth best scorer, like Drew Holiday's role on the Celtics when they won the championship, or Derek White's role when the Celtics won the championship. He is not a max player on your team, and you essentially just spent your way out of not. You just essentially made sure you're not winning a championship this year. And Rob Palinka is getting rightfully clowned for this one. Like this is probably the worst. Like this one's almost as bad as when they went out there and signed like Timothy Mozgov, Luol Deng, or the year they had Steve Nash and Dwight Howard.
Yeah, I think like my biggest beef with the Palinka is like, can they just like stop with these 1 year deals? Like, can you build a roster that stays with each other? Because this whole Lakers team, like, I bet if we looked at the history of the Lakers turnover over the last, let's say, decade, we're going to see that every year it's just these mid level exceptions. They've filled out the roster with a bunch of bums. They have, Luca and Austin Reeves as their core, and now Walker Kessler. And then they just fill the rest of the roster out with scrubs. And not all these guys that I'm talking about are scrubs by any means. I don't think Quentin Grimes is a bad player. I don't think Matisse Thybulle's a bad addition there. Colin Sexton's fine. But, like, you're just filling them up with mid-level, league minimum players at this point. I just don't love it.
Yeah, I don't like it either. So yeah, that is the Lakers, and then again, yeah, I've went through a ton of lists. I don't think Stephen A. is racist. Shoot me for saying that white people have never won a championship with the three best players on their team. It's just a fact. This is like if there were like people take this the same way. This is like saying like, oh, this all there's three Asians on a hockey team as their best player. Do you think they're gonna win?
No,
Yeah,
it just doesn't
this is
happen.
this hockey team's all like I'm just gonna stop there because people take it and do the same thing with Stephen A. Smith. The problem is like, no, it's just a fact. It hasn't happened in history, and this is a history show. So if you don't study it and you're a casual, just say so. Emmanuel Acho, just a casual racist, wanting to call Stephen A. racist, and he's just trying to put him down so he can be somewhere in sports, and he just kind of does his weird BuzzFeed show at this point. And then the Grizzlies had an interesting offseason. They add Jeremy Grant because they traded Donovan Mitchell, or not Donovan Mitchell, they traded John Morant to Portland, and he's going to play with Damian Lillard and Danny Agdia. And they also received Jeremy Grant, Chris Murray. They signed A.J. Johnson, signed Quentin Post, who's a solid backup for the Warriors, get D'Angelo Russell in a trade with the Pistons, and they get Isaiah Stewart as well as part of that 4-team deal that was done. So you also get Cam Boozer in the draft. I don't think they'll be a playoff team, but I do think the Grizzlies are going to be a tough out and potentially a fun league pass team. I do think they're going to have some fun next year with this team. I don't have any expectations, but I guess I like the direction they're going with this rebuild. You kind of know you're not going to go far with John Morant, and now he's out in Portland.
Yeah, I think for this team, there's a lot of players in this team that are easy to root for. You have Cam Boozer, who I think, for those who grew up watching his dad play, we're rooting for him there. There's not a lot of expectations around this upcoming season there, but you have veterans like KCP. You have Ty Jerome there. You went out and you signed Taj Gibson as well, so he's still floating around. He's still playing. But then you have some core players that you can build around there. Scottie Pippen Jr.'s there at this point. They got Isaiah Stewart, who they can build with as well. So they have a fun little team. D'Angelo Russell should help a little bit. So it's not like they have a lack of experience, but they have a young core. Zach Edey's there. He's a stud. So they're slowly building a fun team. It's going to probably be a year or two before I see them playing competitive basketball in May and June. But I think they're in the right direction, and getting rid of Ja was absolutely the right move. So for Memphis, I like the direction they're going in, and this is going to be a fun team to root for.
Yeah, definitely a fun team, and like the direction they're going with the rebuild. Not going to spend too much time on the Grizzlies there because probably not going to make the playoffs. And then the Heat made a huge trade, so they re-signed Andrew Wiggins to a 3-year deal, and Simon Fotencha. Sorry if I completely butchered that. For all 4 of you watching right now, I appreciate it. And they also signed Tim Hardaway Jr. They get Giannis and Bobby Portis, and they traded away Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, Norman Powell departs in free agency, and then Khalil Ware also goes to the Bucks, and so does Kasperius. Again, apologize if I mess up his name. Yeka Chionis goes to the Bucks as well. So now we have Miami, and they have Bam Adebayo, the greatest scorer in NBA history, arguably, other than Kobe Bryant. At least the 2 best scoring performances that were seen on film. Unlike the other one. And then we have Giannis there with Andrew Wiggins, Tim Hardaway Jr., and this team is going to be big and physical, and it's also going to be an Eric Spoelstra team, and I think that, Giannis is actually going to be motivated next year. He's pretty much been injured every single season, though, so while I don't necessarily bank on Giannis being healthy, even having someone like Tim Hardaway Jr. or Bobby Portis, I think is important. In the second finals run, Tyler Hero was banged up a little bit. So I do think Miami, they gave up a lot, but Tyler Hero didn't seem like he was going to take that next step into the zone of someone like Devin Booker, where he was always kind of going to be more of a middling star that really should probably be a 6-man, but he's not quite a 6-man, and he's not quite a number 3 or a number 4 on a championship team. And then Jaime Jaquez is just an okay player. Norman Powell is getting old. So I do like what Miami did. I don't think Giannis will be healthy, though. So in the end, I think it will be all for naught, and you're kind of going to be in the same spot.
I think that it depends on what the rest of the offseason looks like and what they do next season. But at least with Giannis, you have him and you have Bam. You have some size there. Can they get LeBron? Looks like LeBron is interested in going there, so that could be an interesting fit there. That being said, like I think the Sixers are a better team right now. Um, I think you maybe could argue the Celtics are better. I think the Celtics have more depth than the Heat do currently, but they are still going to be one of those fun teams in the mix. I still would take them over the Pistons at this point, but at least you have now Miami for the longest time hasn't really had like a true superstar. Like you had Jimmy Butler, and he was really great for you. He brought you to 2 finals. We love Jimmy Butler on Miami, but like Giannis is definitely a step above that, and you haven't really had someone like that since the D Wade and the LeBron era. So I like this for them. They did give up quite a bit. Like Tyler Harrow is going to be gone. That's going to be a loss. They'll miss a good scorer there, but at least with the players that they got rid of, they have players that they can fill in for him. You still have Andrew Wiggins there, so this team's going to be a lot of fun. But I think the biggest risk, like you mentioned, like there is going to be injury concern with Giannis, him getting a little bit older. But injuries aside, this team should be competing for the East at this point, up with the Sixers and up with the rest of them. I still feel like there's moves to be made there for them to complete the roster, but overall, I like where they are, and I think they should be competitive next year for sure in the mix of the East.
When you think of Bam, though, do you think of like a good 3-point shooter, though?
I think of like the greatest scorer of all time.
Yeah, you think of the greatest scorer of all time who couldn't even survive the play-in tournament last year, and then Giannis has not been healthy the past 5 years. He hasn't been healthy in the playoffs since 2022. And he's consistently lost to the Heat. Eric Spoelstra has kind of been the Giannis whisperer, where he had two I would say, Miami teams that definitely weren't as good as the Bucks that he lost to. Giannis also lost to the Pacers in a year that he was supposed to beat them as well. So he's kind of underachieved the past 5 years, has not been healthy. And then you want to talk about Jaylen Brown being a diva last year, but everyone's leaving out like players. I believe it was Miles Turner who came out and said, I can find the clip, that Giannis would sometimes just be 2 hours late to a flight because he felt like it, and he would just make the team wait for him. So all these people like, oh, Jaylen Brown thinks he's so smart, huh? Yeah, Jaylen Brown wouldn't trade himself for Paul George. He literally laughed at the trade and said, what are they doing? But Jaylen Brown thinking he's smart is the problem. But Giannis making his team wait hours on end for him to show up for the plane to leave isn't a problem and isn't a story at all. In fact, Miles Turner gets shamed for coming out and saying it.
Yeah, definitely some interesting treatment there. I definitely think if you're in the NBA, everyone's going to be a diva in that case, and it looks like he was definitely very unhappy at the end of his time in Milwaukee, but now he has a fresh start. I do think that Eric Spoelstra has a way of unlocking that next level with somebody. You kind of saw it with Jimmy Butler. I think the best era of Jimmy Butler was in Miami. And maybe with Giannis, especially if he's been the whisperer for him, maybe we can unlock another level of Giannis. Maybe we see another MVP potentially if he stays healthy. So I do think Eric Spoelstra is a guy to remember that he can maximize his team and that roster. So for that, I think Miami's still going to be overachieving. But with this roster, like I still think I'd take the Sixers over this roster currently. But I still think that, like they're still going to be in that competitive mix, and they're still going to be up there with the best of them in the East next year.
Yeah, the crazy thing though is they're gonna have two players on the floor who can't shoot, and Giannis is gonna be going into uh, a year next year where he got hurt last year. He hasn't been healthy in 5 years, and he's another year older, and his signature move is still a charge, and him and Bam can't shoot. Like for me,
And they
it's
need
just gonna be
shooters.
tough for Miami because like this team can't shoot, and also Bobby Portis is one of those players who is similar to Tobias Harris, where he'll play great sometimes and then just doesn't show up in the playoffs. Same thing with Brooke Lopez. He's just one of those guys. He'll play great in moments, look awful, be great until they're up 3-2 against the Celtics, and then just disappear. Disappear against the Indiana Pacers. Disappear against the Miami Heat. And I get Eric Spoelstra should maximize them, but that doesn't mean he can prevent Giannis and Bam from getting injured, and it doesn't mean he can magically make Giannis hit three-pointers. And if he can do that, then you have a chance to win the championship. But I just don't think they're consistent enough of a shooting team to win 4 rounds in the playoffs.
We have German Shepherd Dramos asking, do you take them over the Sixers before or after LeBron joins the Sixers? And I would say I wouldn't take them probably in either scenario under the Sixers. I would definitely take them. I think the Sixers are better currently than the Miami Heat at this time. If LeBron joins the Heat, maybe that's a little more exciting there. But right now, if the season started today, I would say the Sixers are better than the Heat.
Yeah, I would definitely take the Sixers. I mean, you added Dean Wade and Anthony Simons on top of Jaylen Brown, and then you also have VJ Edgecombe, who's going to be better next year when he already had a really good playoff series, and then Tyrese Maxey. And for the Sixers, I just assume Joel Embiid isn't going to be there as well. And then for the Heat, I'm kind of assuming that Giannis or Bam is going to be banged up here. So I would take the Hornets, and honestly, I would take the Raptors over the Miami Heat at this point. And
I don't know if I'd take the Hornets, but that's just me.
not the Hornets, the Raptors.
Raptors. Oh, yeah.
Kawhi and Scotty Barnes.
Yeah. I like the coaching in Miami a little more, and I feel like they're both pretty evenly matched, so I might take Miami there, but I definitely think they match up pretty well with Kawhi there. But we have a couple more teams to fly through. Milwaukee is the next team. Basically, all their additions are the addition of the Miami trade. And they also signed Karis LeVert. They re-signed a few other players, as well as Gary Trent. So Milwaukee now, this is a team obviously in rebuild at this point. I have low expectations for how they're going to be next year, especially if Tyler Herro is kind of their main scorer. But I don't expect much from Milwaukee, so I won't cover too much there.
Yeah, I don't really expect anything from Milwaukee either. It's going to be Tyler Hero and Miles Turner as your best players, and then you have Jaime Jaquez, and you're hoping he's going to magically grow here. But this is a team that just hired Taylor Jenkins to be their head coach. Yeah, that's the guy in Memphis who couldn't coach John Morant to not getting suspended, couldn't bring Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane together. Didn't really have control of the locker room, but he's going to go out there and lead the rebuild for the Milwaukee Bucks. That's not just, okay, we don't really know where we're going to be, so let's just hire Taylor Jenkins and then fire him when we find a good coach available or think we're going somewhere. Like, that's the kind of coaching hire that was. He's probably going to get fired after this year or next year. Yeah, that's my thoughts on Milwaukee is you still hired Taylor Jenkins, so you're fine.
I would agree. And then the Timberwolves, we covered them quite a bit with the LaMelo trade. That's the big gist of their offseason. They also signed Trey Lyles. And then they got Mohamedou Gaye in the trade with the Bulls. Timberwolves, I feel like they've gotten a little bit better, but they don't have quite as much size as they did. Mike Conley being gone, that's all right. They can replace him with LaMelo. Julius Randle and Naz Reid leaving, I think, is going to affect their size, but they still have Rudy Gobert, who's massive for them, who is a guy that can guard and frustrate Wemby. We saw that a little bit, but Minnesota should still be in that mix with the Timberwolves will be there with the Spurs of the world, the Thunder. So I think the Timberwolves got a little bit better here.
Yeah, I definitely think they got better. Definitely need to find some size in the offseason. I think they can see how their draft goes, but if DeSumo can keep up his momentum from the playoffs last year, I definitely think that's going to be a very dangerous team. And I think they should be one of the 4 contenders in the West right now. I would have it Spurs, Thunder, Timberwolves right now as far as the main contenders in the West. I think it's really going to be those 3 teams, and then the Nuggets and the Mavericks are kind of on the outside looking in. But after that, we have the Pelicans, and this might be the funniest offseason so far. They didn't add anyone, and they re-signed DeAndre Jordan, and they lost Kevon Looney. What an offseason for the Pelicans. I mean, the Pelicans don't even feel like a real NBA team anymore.
They aren't. No, they're not at all. I mean, they shouldn't exist, and I don't know why they're working on an expansion when all they need to do is just get rid of the Pelicans because what a nightmare. I mean, where's the deal? Like, what are you doing with Zion? What are we doing with all these other additions that haven't panned out there? Like, this team is so pathetic at this point that, like, nobody cares about them. I don't see how the city of New Orleans cares about them. They've been pretty miserable ever since they were bought from the NBA. But that offseason, like re-signing DeAndre Jordan and losing Kevon Looney in the same offseason, like this would have been really sick 10 years ago, re-signing DeAndre Jordan and losing Kevon Looney. But now it's just sad and pathetic, and that's kind of the current state of the Pelicans.
Yeah. Sad and pathetic is a good way to sum it up. And then the Knicks have a very important offseason. Their owner came out and specifically said we're not going to be able to bring everybody back. And they ended up losing Ariel Huck Porter Potty. And then they lost Mitchell Robinson. And then they re signed Mohamed Diarrhea. They re signed Jose Alvarado, Jordan Clarkson, and Landry Shamet. And then who did they replace Mitchell Robinson with? Andre Drummond. So Mitchell Robinson, I would say, is a much better, more physical player. I would say the main reason why the Knicks destroyed the Sixers so badly was because of how bad Mitchell Robinson would bully Embiid and Andre Drummond. So I do think losing Mitchell Robinson is a sneaky you might not repeat next year, and that's going to be a pretty big gap to fill, and I don't think Andre Drummond does it next year. So, yeah, we haven't had a repeat champion, and I think the Knicks are on course to not be a repeat champion, whether it's injuries and then also losing a little bit of depth in the front court.
Yeah, I think Mitchell Robinson, Andre Drummond, definitely a downgrade size-wise, but I'm surprised they haven't really lost that many players for a champion. Like, seems like they've re-signed most of them. Ariel Hakaporti, like losing him, that sucks. And of course, he goes to the Sixers, but they still have that core. If they have Brunson there and they have the other depths around them, Josh Hart's of the world, I still feel like they should be right up there with the rest of them. Can they repeat? Yes. Will they repeat? Just the way it's been the last decade, my answer is no. But they're still, I feel like their offseason, for what it could be, I don't think it's nearly as devastating as I expected it to be for players that they would lose.
Yeah, they still have OG Anunoby there. The problem is now going to be it's going to be much worse when Karl Anthony Towns gets into foul trouble because Mitchell Robinson came in and was a physical presence against the San Antonio Spurs. Andre Drummond, on the other hand, that's when the
Not
Celtics
quite the
played
same.
their best basketball.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, interesting there. The Thunder, they've actually lost quite a bit of players, but they re-sign Hartenstein. They keep Kenrick Williams. No additions, but they lose Lou Dort via trade to the Hawks. Isaiah Joe is out of the door. Aaron Wiggins is gone as well, and then Brandon Carlson leaves for the Trailblazers. So losing Lou Dort, Isaiah Joe, and Aaron Wiggins, I feel like those are some nice role players there. The Thunder still have a bunch of depth, and they've been really great at drafting as well, so I'm not worried about them. But these are all really nice role players. I feel like their depth is definitely going to take a hit. Um, but again, they should still be up there with the Timberwolves and the Spurs of the world. So not worried, but I still think that it's something to take a look at as the season approaches.
yeah, then you look at it and you're like, oh, they still have Jared McCain and AJ Mitchell. So they'll be fine
Yeah,
as long as Jalen Williams is healthy. Really, like the biggest question for them is Jalen Williams' hamstring, who he aggravated 3 times last year during the season. So it's clearly an issue for him. So he needs to figure it out before it becomes a bigger injury. So for the Thunder, I think you could afford to lose those players, especially with how AJ Mitchell played in the playoffs. And then also it's more time for Jared McCain and Jalen Williams, and the Thunder were playing a lot more players in the playoffs than most other teams, where they had a pretty big rotation. So I did think they could afford to move some depth, and they also have so many picks right now where if they just need to unload them for some role players, they can, and they'll be fine.
Yeah, that's fair. The Magic, they re-sign Javon Carter, Jonathan Isaac, bring in Nikola Vucevic, who returns there. Mortez Wagner is off to the Nets, but not really anything overly exciting for the Magic. I can't get overly excited for Vucevic at this point in his career joining the Magic. This is a team that I feel like is really close to being competitive. Like, I mean, truly competitive in the East. But Paulo Banchero needs to take that next step. They could probably use another scorer alongside him, and so far they haven't done that. Instead, they lose Wagner, who was really good for you in the playoffs. So, yeah, overall, not overly impressed with their offseason.
Yeah, not super impressed. Health was kind of the issue last year. They weren't healthy all regular season, and then Franz got hurt against the Pistons, so that's obviously a concern, especially since if it happened once, it can definitely happen again. But I do think there is a good team, and I like that they signed the Spurs assistant head coach. So I do think a coaching change could definitely help this Magic team. So if they do improve, that's going to be the reason as far as that, and then just staying healthy. But if you have a season where everyone's kind of banged up, you're not able to find some continuity, chances are it might happen again, especially with Wagner getting injured multiple times throughout the year. So as of right now, I can't really put my arms around the Magic because it's too health dependent. So I just can't trust them.
Fair.
So that's the Magic. The Philadelphia 76ers, we've pretty much gone pretty deep into. We've gone over every player here except for Ariel Hucka Porter Potty, and we don't need to do that. But a team that is going to be really good now that you're leaving, the Phoenix Suns. I mean,
A lot of fun.
they re-signed Mark Williams. Jordan Goodwin is all right. And then they get Luke Kennard and Miles Bridges on this team. Get rid of Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. But thoughts on the Phoenix Suns next year now that they have Miles Bridges?
They've done a lot of really nice things this offseason. They got some picks from the Hornets as well, so they have a little bit more flexibility. They're not in cap hell like they were over the last year or so. They have a fun core. I mean, still have Devin Booker. Dylan Brooks has been really good for you. And then you have Miles Bridges to the mix. Like, this is a Suns team that maybe they're not up there with the Spurs and the Timberwolves and the Thunder of the world, but they're still a very fun team. And I feel like even last year they out exceeded expectations for what we expected. This is a team that I think can play themselves out of the play-in tournament and into maybe a 6 seed and then be a little fun. So I really like what the Suns have done this offseason. I think they're going to be a lot of fun. I don't think they're quite a contender yet, but they're on their way there.
But yeah, I definitely think it's a positive offseason for the Suns. I still think they're kind of going to be in the same place where they're just going to play one of these top teams and completely get overwhelmed. So they're just going to need the right matchup. But against the Timberwolves, Thunder, Spurs, do they have a chance? No. And does
No.
Devin Booker's changing his number to number 15 add to his aura, too? He went from 1 to 15. What did you think about that? How did it make you feel when you first saw it?
I was like, good for Devin Booker. I didn't really think too much of it. Good for him. I think he wore 15 at Kentucky was where I think he started. So
In USA.
good for him. Huh?
In USA.
Yeah. Yeah, I wore it in USA too. I like it. I think for the Spurs, like the Suns are still going to be very fun. But yeah, for Devin Booker, I didn't think much about the jersey change, but maybe it will unlock another level for him.
All right, and then we have the Blazers re-sign Robert Williams to a 3-year deal. They add Brandon Carlson to a 1-year deal. They trade for Ja Morant, add Micah Carter. They lose Marquise Thibault, Jeremy Grant, and Chris Murray via that trade for Ja Morant. So now we have Dame, Ja, and Drew Holiday kind of clogging up that.
And Scoot.
And Scoot. Yeah, they're all clogging up the backcourt there. So I guess they're kind of taking a page out of the Thunder's book where we're going to have a big kind of 4 guards and then Denny Ogdia at power forward here. So they're going to roll out like Ja, Drew Holiday, Dame, Denny Ogdia, and like Robert Williams or Scoot Henderson maybe on the floor. So I do think they're probably still going to trade someone else on this team, probably Drew Holiday, because like you have 4 guards on this team. Like maybe Drew Holiday's a good enough defender to play 3, but you can't play all 4 of them together.
Yeah. I don't know why they traded for Ja Morant. I don't really see the vision there at all. I don't think he's a positive addition to this team, but I do think that this offseason isn't over either. Like, I like that idea that they're probably trading somebody, but it's still a team that I don't have much excitement for. They made it to the postseason. They got a win against the Spurs, which is good for them. That's kind of a win in their eyes, but I just don't think they're there yet. I do like Denny Advia a lot. He played really great in the postseason, but um, they're just not there yet. And their moves, I don't like the addition of Ja at all.
Yeah, so we'll see what the Blazers do, but yeah, it's just a weird dynamic with him and Damian Lillard, and then you're like, where does Scoot Henderson and Drew Holiday fit into this? And yeah, like John Morant really doesn't fit on any NBA team though when you think about it because he's a guard who can't shoot. So at that
Yeah.
point, it's like, where do you go from here? Because then you have to have a center on your team who can. Your starting center has to be able to hit threes if that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't believe in the Trailblazers. I think good for them for getting out of the play-in tournament, but I just think that there was a lot of breaks that went their way, and I just don't know if next year with some of the other teams that have gotten better, if they're gonna make it back to the playoffs next year.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think it'll be a weird season for them. But if Dame comes back and is pretty healthy, then I mean, Dame when he's good, if he's just like a 20-point scorer, that would definitely help. So we'll see with the Portland Trail Blazers. And then the Kings, this one's pretty easy. Since it's not the Pelicans, it's not quite as funny, but all they did was re-sign Precious Achua, Daquan Plowden, and then they lost Devin Carter. Bam, easy. The Kings are going to suck next year. Moving on to the Spurs, they didn't lose anybody. They re-signed Harrison Barnes, Julian Champagnie to a 3-year deal. Wemby signed a 5-year extension, took a little bit less money on that deal. And then they re-signed Jordan McLaughlin. And Tobias Harris signed to a 2-year deal. And Stephon Castle grew 2 inches, so now he is 6'8".
Yeah, Spurs. Tobias Harris. I was nervous because we don't. I don't really love Tobias Harris historically, but he could be another scorer for them. Good guy off the bench. So Spurs, like I've talked about pretty much this whole episode, they should be right there in it and maybe make it over the hump and win the championship. They're definitely in that bubble.
Yeah, Tobias Harris for them is literally just depth. They don't need him to be clutch or do anything. They just need him to give them a few good games, a few stops. I do think this team does need to solve the power forward position. They did draft. They were calling it. They drafted like the 7-foot player as well, along with Wemby, and they were calling it Alien and Predator. Um, he didn't really like that nickname because no one really wants to be called Predator.
Unless if
As
you
far
run for
as
Congress.
unless if you run for Congress, it's not. That's the only good time to be a Predator. But they also added some size in the offseason. As enough they didn't have Kelly Olynyk, Bismack Biyombo, and Luke Cornett on their bench, they now have another 7-footer on this team, and maybe they'll play around with playing Wemby at power forward in some stints here. But overall, I still think the Spurs, they're young, so really they just need everyone to continue to get better, and they should be right there with the chance to get back in the finals. I'm not going to put them right back in the finals, though, because we haven't seen anybody do that in the past, essentially, 8 years.
No.
And then the Raptors add Kyle Anderson. We talked about them adding Kawhi Leonard as well and Elijah Martin, but pretty much already went over the Raptors. Definitely think they are the most interestingly scary team where you just really don't know what you're going to get from Kawhi Leonard, and then is he going to get suspended because of that whole thing as well, with the Clippers paying him through, essentially they created a company just to pay him, which is what Steve Ballmer did. So is Kawhi going to get suspended for that, and the NBA going to look into that at all, or are they just going to sweep it under the radar like one of the refs getting sent to prison for rigging games?
Yeah, Raptors are probably the biggest wild card in the East, I would say, because Kawhi is a little bit older, but he did off of one of his best seasons in recent memory, so he's definitely still got it. He's not age is not necessarily a problem there, but health has been a concern the last few years. The Raptors, though, was really impressed with what I saw against them against the Cavs series, and you now get Kawhi. You hate to see Dick go. We love Dick, especially I know you love Dick. Brandon Ingram, hate to see him go, but Kawhi Leonard is more than those guys combined, so I like it there. So Raptors are probably the biggest wild card in the East at this point. So I'm interested to see how the next season plays out for them.
And then after that, we have the Jazz, and they re-sign Mo Bamba, Yusuf Nurkic. They add Jackson Hayes and Josh Okogie, and they trade Walker Kessler. For them, I do think that they're a team that should be in the play-in tournament next year, especially since you traded for Jaren Jackson mid-season. You're kind of putting this team together. That's why you're able to trade Walker Kessler. So I do think you have a lot of good young talent, and this Jazz team is going to come along, especially with another good draft this year, having the number 2 overall pick. I think this team is set to at least make a play-in appearance, and then maybe the year after that make the playoffs. But they've kind of been pushing on the door for a little bit. So am I crazy? Or, like, on the other hand, they could just be like the Chicago Bulls of the West too, without the championships.
I trust that Danny Ainge is constructing a good roster there. I like their bigs, like Jaren Jackson and Lauri Markkanen together. That's fun. They did get Ace Bailey in the draft, and he was a highly coveted pick, so that should be fun. It really kind of depends on their prospects. I like Jackson Hayes. That's fine, whatever. Nurkic is a fine player. They have some fun younger players that I think could take another leap, but I think they could make the play-in tournament. I just don't know if they're going to win or just make it into the playoffs. But can I see them being the 8th to 10th best team in the league? Yes, for sure. Or 7th to 10th best team? Then yeah, for sure. But they are getting better. I can see the improvements there, and they should be a little bit more enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, so I'm excited. Maybe I'll make it to a Jazz game next year, because they're still pretty cheap. And it's, unlike Dallas, their stadium's right downtown. And then we have the Wizards. Trae Young, this is the last team. We made it to the end of the entire NBA offseason, pretty much an hour and a half going over every single pick, trade, signing, what have you. And then we have Trae Young to cap it off, re-signing to a 4-year deal. DeAndre Ayton joins via trade with the Lakers. If you missed it, Chris Middleton joins with the sign and trade, and then they lose Jaden Hardy and D'Angelo Russell. But picture a starting lineup, if you will, with Trae Young, DeAndre Ayton, Anthony Davis, Chris Middleton, who I don't know who I'm missing at shooting guard, but you're essentially going to have an all-NBA team from 2014. So congrats about that. Probably a little young for Trae Young, maybe like 2016, 2015. But it's
Even
been a long time since he hit that big shot with the Knicks. And honestly, I don't think they're going to be that bad if Anthony Davis is healthy.
No, I don't think they're going to be bad either. And the East is, I think it's a little bit stronger than last year, but it's still a fairly weak conference in comparison to the West. And, I mean, Trae Young, he's a stud when he's dialed in. Anthony Davis, one of the better big men of our time. And then Chris Middleton still has enough in the tank that he could be fun. They do have some fun talent, too, like AJ Diasta. He's the guy that they just drafted first overall. They have Bob Carrington that was there. Alex Sarr is still there. So they have a lot of lottery picks that I think lottery picks nowadays in the NBA, you need 2 or 3 years for them to start to get their feet wet, and they're starting to come together. So could this team be in the play-in? For sure. Definitely not going to be as bad as they've been last year. I think they definitely made some massive strides.
Yeah, so I think this Wizards team will be fun. It's just the problem is Anthony Davis's health. Have you seen the clip of Anthony Davis when he's streaming 2K and he's playing as himself and he gets injured while he's streaming?
Yeah. Yep.
Like, that's the real problem with the Wizards. Like, I talk about Giannis, like, okay, maybe I'm a little bit harsh on Giannis, but I can't talk about Giannis and all my concerns about the Miami Heat and just be like, oh, I think the Wizards are fun without saying, yeah, I think Anthony Davis isn't going to stay healthy next season. I mean, I get that's like, pretty easy to predict, but it is what it is.
It's like predicting Joel Embiid to not be healthy. It's like predicting Joel Embiid to get hurt or Josh Allen doing something bad in the playoffs. Like, You're just betting on the inevitable. We just
Yeah.
know it's going to happen.
Yeah, inevitable too. Imagine, fighting 5 years ago, and in
Oh,
that fight
yes.
you break your foot, and then, you're gonna fight 5 years later, and then the UFC is trying to hype up a fight, like you're gonna do something, and then within like 30 seconds the fight is over. I went to watch that flying home from. I was in the Chicago airport, and we had like gotten our gate changed 3 times, had finally got on the plane, then we were just sitting on the tarmac for like an hour, and then I had the UFC fight on. I'm like, okay, UFC is going to carry me through this flight, and then it was literally over as soon as it started. When they're
Yep.
like, this is going to be a 5 round war, I'm like, oh, who could have predicted that? Conor McGregor, after not fighting for 5 years. And the problem is that Max Holloway has been like in intense wars these past 5 years too. Like he had the BMF where he went 5 rounds and got knocked out right at the end versus Justin Gaethje. He's come out. He beat some other fighters, and he's just been fighting the past few years where Conor McGregor hasn't been. And the only thing is he has 2 fights left on his UFC deal, so it seems like that's why it did it. But like people should definitely feel scammed because I think this was in Vegas too.
Yeah, it was.
It's
Yeah.
like the Patty
And
fight was good, but that one was over in like a minute as well, where he just immediately grabbed his neck and then choked him out. And then that guy he choked out went to sleep. So he was like French special forces, so he didn't tap. But then this is like the main card you're hyping up, where it's like now I don't think people will buy Conor McGregor as like the face of a main card again, unless you're really desperate for a title fight. But like I don't really see him fighting again, and it's like sad because you knew it's over for Conor McGregor, despite all like the weird stuff that he's been doing the past few years. But then you just see this fight, and you're like, I saw that coming, but it's kind of also just pathetic, where he just tears his ACL, kind of just sits on the ground, and like, oh well, I guess it's over.
yeah, for me, like, I historically, I wouldn't say I root for McGregor historically, but coming back from a 5 year hiatus, coming back from a major injury, it's like his major comeback and everything. Like, that's something that I can get behind and support because he is one of the greater fighters of our time, at least just name brand wise. And so, like, when I saw that fight, I knew that Holloway was probably going to win, but McGregor, I was rooting for him to win, just given the storyline there, and then to see the kick immediately, and he starts limping immediately as soon as, ironically, my friend that I'm watching this with puts money down on McGregor. Just to see the way that fight happened, even if McGregor got his ass kicked by Holloway, that would have been a better arc. But I feel like all of UFC and all of the fight fans were cheated in the sense that McGregor, for a guy that hasn't fought in 5 years, to make a kick like that to start the fight, to go out with a bang, and then immediately regret it and injure yourself, like, this is when we go into the category of Celtic Shaq. We go out there with, like, Jets Aaron Rodgers, like, just really sad eras of all-time greats. And it's just better if, like, we don't think about this fight in the grand scheme of his career because this was just kind of a pathetic fight, to be honest. And the rest of the slates, like Patty kicked that guy's ass, and he was great to watch. And maybe he could be the face of USC someday. But for McGregor, like, stop fighting. You're old. I know you have 2 more fights left in your card, but if this is the fights that you're going to keep bringing out, it's only going to harness your legacy over time if you keep doing this. So it was just sad, and that's just not the way I want to see McGregor go out.
Yeah, and he really hasn't been the same since he boxed Floyd Mayweather. He's had some pretty good UFC fights since then, but like he had that fight with Khabib where he went 4 rounds, and then Khabib ends up retiring 4-0. Where McGregor was always just known as a striker, and if he didn't really get you in the first 2 rounds, you could probably survive his striking. And that's the problem when you rely just on striking and power. And he was really good at it. But this is gonna be like the last thing that people remember from him. And then he's like in the press conference throwing down Max Holloway's glasses, taking them off. And, Max fought him when he was younger. McGregor beat him. And then he comes around, then he loses to Dustin Poirier twice. And then he loses to Max Holloway. So he's kind of just now losing to all the people he beat early on in his career. But it just kind of felt like this fight itself, for me, just felt like a scam. From the jump, I'm like, there's no way that this is going to be a competitive fight or go past 2 rounds. Like, he couldn't survive 2 rounds with Dustin Poirier 5 years ago, and he hasn't fought. And Max Holloway has been fighting, and that's really the biggest thing. Where it's like, if you haven't been doing something for 5 years, pretty much the person who's been doing it against the people who are champions, like Max Holloway lost to Ilya Tapora, he lost to Justin Gaethje, but he was still in a fight with them, with the best people in the world at this time, and he fought the past 2 current champions, where McGregor can really only beat up on like low-level fighters now, and he should be better off in that celebrity boxing type of space. But I don't even think he'd do well at that either.
I mean, I think he could beat Jake Paul, but I agree that you don't think he could beat Jake Paul at this point?
He's like 5'8", and Jake Paul's 6'4". Like, Jake Paul is so much bigger than him.
Yeah, size-wise, that is true. I just think it's better for his legacy, like I mentioned, like for him just not to fight anymore. Like, I would rather think about his historic fights that he's had than thinking about this Max Holloway fight. That's better if we just kind of brush under the rug, look back at his legacy and all the fights that he's had, and consider him there. But the more fights that he has, like this Holloway fight, that just kind of feels like you mentioned, like kind of a giant scam. Just feels like all of us gets cheated out of this great fight that we wait for. A lot of these people on the East Coast are waiting till 12, 1 o'clock at night for this to happen. You go through 5 other fights beforehand. Just for that to be the ending climax is just what a whimper. And I feel like, UFC having it on Paramount Plus now is so massive for that sport. And you have a guy like Conor McGregor where even if you're not a UFC fan, you're going to watch it because it's McGregor. And then for that to be the outcome, stains UFC, stains McGregor, not necessarily stains Holloway, but doesn't make Holloway look great either. I just think it's just a whimper for the sport, for a sport that is on the up and up.
Yeah, and for Holloway, I don't really think it stains him. It's more like he took the fight, he got a good payday from it, and then the crazy thing is I think Conor McGregor made like $14 million from it.
Yeah. Something like that. But for the fight to last slightly over a minute, it probably should have lasted half that time. Like, it's embarrassing, frankly. And it's a whimper from McGregor. It's Celtic Shaq. It's Aaron Rodgers on the Jets.
Jumping on the football.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's a career-altering moment for him. And for him to realize, for people to see, like, oh, he's washed at this point. He's not going to be able to fight ever again, most likely.
Yeah, the NFL refs just deciding it's okay for DeMarcus Ware and I'm blanking on his name right now. He was on the Broncos as well, and that Von Miller, him and DeMarcus Ware, like, oh yeah, you can just hit Cam Newton above the shoulders. That's fine. You can just knock him out. And then he doesn't jump on the football at the end of the game. Goes out with a whimper, and then he really wasn't the same after that.
Yeah, same idea. But it's sad to see. But hopefully, with the rest of the fights, there are some good UFC fighters that are coming up. So hopefully they start to build up those teams. But for the whimper, that was the McGregor fight. Sad to see. And for people who bet on that game, for that to be the outcome, even if you won the money, that's just not a way for that game to go out.
But we covered every trade signing in the NBA. Talked a little bit about the disappointing Conor McGregor fight. Pretty much probably to end his career. He's probably going to have one more fight where he kind of just sits down at the beginning of the round just to fulfill his deal with the UFC. But other than that, I know I've watched and listened to a lot the past few weeks. What have you been watching or been listening to recently?
So as far as movies that I've watched, I did finally watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I've seen probably a lot of movies over the last month, but I would shout out a game that I attended, which was Red Sox Yankees. in New England at Fenway Park when the World Cup is in town. It was Red Sox Yankees. The Red Sox had taken the first 3 games of the series. Final game, it's Will's birthday. I have my girlfriend's there, Will's lady, Alex's lady there. So triple date. But the reason why I'm hyping this up is because it was the World Cup. There was all these Europeans there, which is never usually the case. And the people behind us, there was 2 full rows behind us of Germans that were all doing German chants throughout the entire game. And throughout the entire time, they had chants just like, it's like, if you like baseball, stand up. That's one of the chants. It was super sick. And then like you'd see like this Northeastern guy just turn around like, oh yeah, I like baseball. I'll stand up. They had like the soccer chants were there. Great game. Perfect weather in New England, by the way, like classic summer in New England type weather. And then to top all of it off, the Yankees were up. The Red Sox came back. It went into overtime. I don't know if have you seen like the tarps off celebrations at all? Like I think it's more of a baseball thing, but essentially like a whole row of guys will like take off their shirt and do like this kind of motion there. So eventually, all of the bleachers, all the Germans had taken their shirt off and they were doing this. So Alex joins in, Will joins in, I join in, and eventually there's an entire bleacher, like not just row, but like just an entire section that's doing the tarps off on television. So it gets super crazy.
You got on TV.
And then yeah, I don't know if I got on TV, but that row did. And then the best of it all is that the Red Sox walked it off in extras to sweep the Yankees. And since that day, they are now 18-2 since that day. So pretty fucking great as far as sports moments. I've had a lot of great Red Sox games, but I feel like that one was the best by far, especially with all the conditions there.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, it's definitely like as close you can be to a playoff game without it being a playoff game where it's Red Sox Yankees. They walk it off in extra innings. It really doesn't get better than that. Especially, I know they're 17-2. This kind of happened after Jaylen Brown got traded, so maybe the Patriots and Red Sox are good again, and then the Celtics and the Bruins are gonna suffer from it. Yeah, I think New England's like at its best when like the Red Sox and the Celtics are good, but is this like a team that is in the playoffs because they won 7-2, or were they so far behind it doesn't really make a difference and it's kind of just playing with house money?
Well, here's the thing. That day, to start at that time, they were 14 games behind 500, and they won that series. And then since then, they have now won 14 consecutive games as of today. They had like a 7-game winning streak before that was broken. So they've gone like 23-3 over the last 26 games. So now they went from being like 15 games out of the wild card to now they're in the wild card. If the season ended today, they would be in the playoffs. So the season was over, but now it's back because they have gone on this unprecedented run, probably the craziest turnaround in recent baseball memory. But amazing. And the Red Sox, they pitch really well. They can't score runs to save their lives, but lately they can score runs to save their lives. So they're kind of back. But I would agree. As far as like New England, it's best when the Red Sox are good and the Celtics. And maybe the Bruins. The Bruins we haven't seen good in a while, but those
I
those
feel like
three.
the Patriots fans are the worst though.
Yes.
But
Worst
like,
fans in all sports.
so the Red Sox, I thought their problem last year was they could hit but couldn't pitch. So now this year they can't hit but they can pitch.
That's baseball for you. Yeah, they were terrible at pitching last year, and now they have the best pitching staff in the league, but they had the worst offense in the league for the most part of the year. So they were losing games 1-0, 2-1, all that, and now they can score runs and their pitching's good. So that's why they've won so many games in a row because they do everything at this point now.
That's crazy.
Yeah, baseball's an interesting sport to say the least. But you've had a whole month of content to watch. What have you watched lately?
Yeah, so I've watched a couple things, but What I have at least been trying to watch is House of the Dragon, and this is a spin-off of Game of Thrones. And if you've seen Game of Thrones, you know that Joffrey has a scene where he essentially has already spoiled the ending of the show. So it's one of those shows where it's kind of like Game of Thrones, I guess prequel trilogy like Star Wars had, where the first few seasons is arguably some of the best television in history until the end. Even the end, like rewatching it, it's not quite as bad as people say. So you could still argue like with the first 6 seasons, it's the best show of all time, just with how cinematic it is. But this, I watched the first season. I'm like, okay, this is like fine. They have some pretty interesting stuff with the King Viserys there, and then they do a time jump halfway through the season, and then it kind of gets clunky from there. You have some pretty interesting dragon battles and action happen in the first season, and then you get to the second season. What happens? Writer's strike. So, what does that mean? We're gonna send Matt Smith's character to a castle. He's just gonna kind of be haunted by a witch the whole season. Something that could have been a side plot for an episode normally in Game of Thrones. And then what happens in the second season? A lot of talking in rooms and a lot of nothing. And then you have some marching that happens. So it's the writer's strike, and they're like, oh, well, that's why we can do the big finale at the end of it, and had to kind of cut the season short. So then you go to season 3, and it's just been coming out one episode at a time. The first episode, they're like, oh, yeah, we're back. And essentially, we start out with a pretty big battle, but even as far as Game of Thrones, the battle doesn't feel that intense. It's like a good first episode where it's good enough to get me hooked back into it. There was a good naval battle. The other kind of battle going on really wasn't as interesting as anything that had happened in Game of Thrones. And then essentially, if you don't know the plot of the show, it's about this queen who essentially is exiled because someone, her childhood friend, betrays her and essentially was married to her father. So essentially, she puts her kids on the throne instead of the king's oldest daughter, and making her queen. So they essentially send Rhaenyra out. She's banished, starting her own rebellion for the throne. And then something happens where she essentially just walks into King's Landing because they leave it undefended with her dragons. And then she's like, okay, yeah, I'm the queen now. And then King's Landing is mine. And then you're like, wait, what just happened? And then the next 2 episodes are just her talking in rooms and then absolutely nothing happening. And I kid you not, outside of maybe 2 episodes the last 2 seasons and maybe 3 episodes in the first season, I have fell asleep every time I watch this show. It's like when this show comes on, a gas leak comes on in this house. It's like the BBC watered down, horrible version of Game of Thrones. Like, just boring. You don't like anybody. The action isn't as interesting, and people's argument for it was like, well, yeah, if you don't like it, at least it's better than other stuff on TV, right? I'm like, so the only standard we have right now is better than other stuff on TV. You know, you can go back and watch The Sopranos, right? You can go back and watch The Wire. It's something that comes out once a week, but like nothing in this show has been like, oh my god, this makes it so worth like investing this much time in it. And I've literally fell asleep and every time watching it. And then just the characters make stupid decisions for the sake of the plot, are poorly written. And at the end of the show, you're just like, I wish the dragons would just eat everybody, actually.
Yeah, I've heard mixed things. I've seen people love this show. I've seen people hate the show. For me, anytime there's a spin-off of a show as massive as Game of Thrones, and transparently, I've never watched Game of Thrones, but it's a show that I should watch. But anytime they do a spin-off of like a Game of Thrones, they did a spin-off of Harry Potter. Historically, with the exception of like Better Call Saul, more often than not, those always fall flat. And I feel like this is kind of an example of that. The reviews are pretty raving. They have it at 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, but um, I don't think anything's gonna reach that pinnacle that Game of Thrones had. For the sake of Game of Thrones was such like a cultural moment for us. Like I feel like there's a lot of people that really gravitated towards it, and with this show, it just feels like it's kind of a cash grab. With my, like I mentioned, like kind of ignorant, blind, not knowing much about Game of Thrones, feels like it's just kind of a cash grab for them, especially because it took so long for them to end Game of Thrones that I have low expectations thinking about House of Dragons, just given the history of cinema and film, like and as far as TV is concerned. Historically, these reboots usually suck, and maybe we're kind of online with this particular show.
Yeah, and it's one of those shows where it's like technically like it's a well-made show and there's some pretty epic shots with the dragons. I don't know if it's just how spoiled we are, but there's just something about it whenever it comes on, it just puts me right to sleep like there's a gas leak in the house. And I love Game of Thrones. Like Game of Thrones is up there with Breaking Bad and The Sopranos for me. It has some of the best sequences in it, so it's just like comparing it to one of the greatest shows of all time isn't fair, but it also just feels like BBC slop at the end of the day. So it's like HBO's version of a BBC show. And there's good material there where you could make it epic, but just them walking into King's Landing and saying, "Oh yeah, it's ours now." What? Like that's anticlimactic. And then there's this one character named Allison. If you know the show, you know. It's like every time she tries to do something, it's too late. So whenever she tries to help and her help is coming too late, she just gets everyone in her family killed. So like anytime she tries to help, like people die. So it's just a frustrating show with characters that aren't very well written, and sometimes they're just stupid for the sake of the plot.
I see. Yeah, I if I'm gonna watch Game of Thrones, I'm gonna start with Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. Even if I watch Game of Thrones, I don't know if this is a show that I would watch, but it seems like it's good NyQuil for you and good melatonin for you. So maybe it's still worth a watch to finish. Helps with your REM sleep, but maybe not worth diving too deep into it.
Yeah, I could literally feel it coming on last night too, and I couldn't stop it. It was
Mm.
like being grabbed by a shadow of sleep. It's like you just feel something like closing in around you, and I'm like, anytime I watch the show, I just can't fight it, and I'm out. And I fell asleep on the couch too, so like get woken up. All right, time to go upstairs. Like, oh dang, and then like you go back. Once you fall asleep, like once you fall asleep somewhere, and then you get woken up and immediately fall asleep somewhere else. I don't know about you, but I kept forgetting where I was. I was so confused. Like when I woke up in the middle of the night the next time. I don't know if that's happened to you before.
It has absolutely. Yeah, when I was in New Hampshire, me and Gabby would take naps, and sometimes it'd be on the couch, sometimes it'd be in a bed. And if we got woken up from a nap on a couch and moved to the bed, I'd like wake up during the night and just wander around like where the fuck, especially because I was visiting and going somewhere that I hadn't been before. So like just walk and you're just startled. You're like, where the fuck am I? So I've had that happen to me for sure.
Yeah, it just was two different places, like 3 nights in a row, or like 2 nights in a row, essentially, and then traveled for 2 weeks, and then came home. So like not used to that. So just woke up, and then I was, whoa, where am I? Like that's what House of the Dragon will do to you. So definitely don't recommend it. I watched some other stuff that I'll probably get to next week because we've been talking for a while though. Unless I don't know if you watched the third Avatar movie.
No, I haven't watched anything past the first one.
Anything past the first one? Okay, yeah, because I know you're like gonna see it in theater. Didn't end up seeing the second one, so
My next
I'll save that.
showing, my next big movie experience is seeing the Odyssey in Denver because I have this week and next week, and then I move back to New Hampshire, and then on my trip I hit Denver, Kansas City, Chicago, and Pittsburgh. And while I'm in Denver, I'll see the Odyssey in 70 millimeter because all of the Phoenix ones are already sold out, and they're sold out for like weeks. It's ridiculous. Unless if I want to sit in like the front, which as far as I'm concerned, if I'm sitting in the front, I'm not sitting there. I'm just gonna wait. But That's the next movie I'll see. Will be the Odyssey.
Yeah, I'm going on Sunday. I bought tickets tonight and it was like 11 a.m., 11:10 a.m. It's either see it at like 10:50 at night and like sit in the front row. If you sit in like if there's the front row, there's kind of a gap, and then the handicap row and it reclines. The like handicap row really isn't that bad. So that's where I'm sitting. So it was either like get out of the theater at 2 a.m. Um, and before a weeknight, or go see it at 11 in the morning. So we're doing a vitamin and seeing it at 11 a.m.
That could be fun.
I'll have
That'll
to
be a good
like
time.
bring two gummies for like halfway through the movie though. Just set a stopwatch once it hits like an hour and take another one.
Yeah, you should. I'm gonna definitely have some medicine for my viewing, but it looks like it's an epic. It seems like it's well reviewed. Christopher Nolan's pretty good track record wise, so I'm excited for it. But we'll be back for next week, and I'll probably watch something in between that before then for
Yeah.
next week.
It seems very like chudded out though for the people that are like, this movie sucks, and it's like, well, it's Christopher Nolan, so it's like not gonna be the Odyssey, and people are like, Odysseus isn't really the same character, but at the same time, it's still an epic action movie, and it's still filmed really well, and there's still really cool action movies. I'm like, yeah, I just want a really cool action movie. Like all the drama around it ended up being over like 4 minutes of runtime in a 2 hour and 53-minute movie. So I do think it'll be a fun action movie, but like kind of with when you get something so hyped up, you kind of do. I kind of buy into the hate just to temper my expectations, but deep down inside, I'm like hoping it's my favorite movie of the year because I love kind of that big, grand, epic, and like historical time. So I do think it should be really good. So I'm looking
I
forward
think
to
it will
seeing
be
it
too.
Sunday.
Yeah, I kind of do the same with movies that are hyped like that, especially like with a movie like Inception, which I've already talked about before, but I expected it to be not worth the hype, and then it actually was. So then I'm kind of that annoying person now, but I hope with the Odyssey it's the same way, where it's hyped and it lives up to the hype because it's a pretty big project for him. It's probably the biggest that he's had. So I hope it's just a sick epic and that it's really great to watch, especially because I'll be in a different city to watch it.
Yeah, everyone kind of said it was kind of just Christopher Nolan's wet dream where he literally invented. You saw like they had to make like a soundproof container for the IMAX camera, and then it's like 300-pound cameras that they're carrying around. They're filming like 20 days at sea, and like say what you will about Christopher Nolan, I'm not always his biggest fans, but he does make some pretty epic movies. So even if it's not accurate to the
Absolutely.
book, well, no problem for me. I haven't read the book, so I'm just like hope it's an okay movie that's
Absolutely.
entertaining.
Yeah. But we will be back next week to cover all things NBA, NFL, and Brick Talk football as well. So be sure that you're there for that. Most importantly,